Welcome everybody to the Norton Planning Board's meeting of Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. Again, this is a public hybrid meeting, so members of the public are welcome to participate in person or remotely. In person, we are at the Norton Town Hall at 72 East Main Street. To join online via video, you can use the Zoom link available in the meeting agenda or using the Zoom app 638-929-1060. There's also a dial-in number available for those wishing to join by phone. The meeting will also be available on Norton Cable Access after the session, as well as the Norton Media Center's YouTube page. For future sessions, please feel free to email questions to the board ahead of the meeting to Brian Carmichael, town staff, so they can be shared with the members and read into the record if you're not able to attend. I'll ask anybody who's joining us online via Zoom to please mute your lines until you're ready to speak, just to make sure that we keep the interference and everything else down to a minimum. So with that out of the way, we'll dive into our agenda today and call the meeting to order. We have a couple items in terms of planning board business and policies. One item, Paul, that I think you wanted to discuss was there is a request as we move forward closer to town meeting for a joint session with other boards. And we had targeted that for April the 1st. And there had been a potential request to see if we could move that up to 6 o'clock, correct?
Yes.
And that's our decision if we feel that that makes sense, or if we feel that it's a little bit too early for everybody.
Correct.
Okay. So just a straw poll here. My understanding is it's tough if anybody's coming from Boston to get here for anything earlier than like 7.
I had responded I can't get here until about 6:45.
Okay.
I'll be traveling. I'll be away. I might be able to be on. I'm not sure.
It will be a challenge for me, but you guys have been good about not making me do that too much, so if I was the only holdout,
I think it was the minority of people who were requesting the move anyway. So
okay. Do you see what I mean, how I'm looking at it?
okay. So I think we're leaning towards prefer not, I think would be the board's position to that, Paul, if you can pass that back to the other
Keep it
boards.
at 7:15.
If that makes sense for, yeah, okay. We don't have any bills or warrants to approve at this time, so we can skip that agenda item. We do have approval of minutes, but unless anybody's really itching to get those done, I'll save those for the end when the rest of the items have been covered. Does that make sense? Okay. Final item under general business is the town manager screening committee. If anybody hasn't heard, the current town manager, Mr. Units, has decided that he will be retiring, I believe, in June. Is that correct?
End of July.
End of July. It's one of those months that starts with J. So the moderator is putting together a screening committee, and one of the charges for the planning board is to nominate somebody to serve on that committee. They do not necessarily need to be a member of the board, but they could be. The moderator also has 4 at-large positions that they would fill, and I think they've stated that they're going to try and fill those with anybody not on a current board. So, do we have any initial thoughts on people that we would want to nominate for the screening committee? Not that I want to volunteer myself for more work, but like reviewing resumes and doing interviews is kind of what I do half of the day anyway, so.
I nominate Tim Griffin.
Seconded.
I was gonna say, it's kind of what I do too. Do a lot of team building things. Now, you actively want it though, right?
I would not be opposed to it. I've worked with Mike
No, if you
on,
feel like you actively want it, go for it.
Okay.
So I do not present myself.
anybody else? Okay. I had a motion, I think one of those can count as a second, not sure who was the second. I think it was Steve. Either way. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, I'll figure out how to tell my wife I volunteered for more work later.
It's your
Okay.
birthday.
That's why
You get away with it.
But not, but also willing to give way to anybody else that wanted it.
Yes, okay. So, moving into the public hearing section of our agenda, we have 2 applications in front of us. The first is a modification to a site plan review, MSPR-3 for 360 South Worcester Street. So the applicant can come up, and Paul, I believe you're just gonna share the site plan from your computer, correct?
So Carlos, you want?
I have it here, yeah.
Okay, Carlos will.
Do we have to make any decisions or anything? Because I have to
Paul can-
abstain from it.
Yeah, understood. If anybody has to abstain from this as a butter, is it, Alan, do you have to as well, or no?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I think, not that I want to make you sit in the gallery, but it might make sense just to step away from the,
Can I just back up?
sure. Yes. So
That
if you
might
just
be a
wanna go
bigger
ahead and
challenge for some
give
of
the
us.
overview of what you're looking to do here, sir.
Chair, can I just
Sure.
add that, last year you all approved a special permit and site plan for this when Patriot Relocation was proposing a development. That project didn't happen, and they're coming in now with a site plan modification only because the project in total is under 10,000 square feet, which doesn't trigger a special permit, so they're applying for the site plan modification.
So Paul, just to confirm in that respect, if they would not use the special permit, and so none of the conditions that were attached to the special permit are necessarily attached to this site plan, we have to create new conditions.
Correct, and specifically the specific conditions that were in place for the prior one, but the standard conditions would transfer, they were in
Yeah.
anyway.
Understood. So if you can just give an overview of what the proposal is for the site. And I know there was at least one abutter comment I think you or somebody from your team has seen on it. You can just tie that into the presentation to, even though we've seen it, other members of the public may not have, so.
Yep, very good. Members of the board, Mr. Chairman, Carlos Sculte with Civil and Environmental Consultants representing the applicant for Gallery Building Corporation. He's here with us today as well to talk about any sort of operational questions if there are any after we get through the overview of the project. I think it was highlighted at the beginning. The development was originally approved in August of last year, so we're in front of the board here today for a modification of that site plan review application. You'll find that the development as a whole maintains the original footprint that was proposed. The access points are identical to how they were originally proposed. The overall limits of pavement and building are actually less than they were as originally proposed. The original approval was for a 35,200 square foot single larger building. So the development as proposed breaks those buildings up in a little more manageable manner that works better for the applicant and his proposed operation of the site, which is for Site Civil Construction Contracting Company. So what that means, and we certainly elaborate on that if we need to, is that there's a number of employees that come in at the beginning of the day. The dark gray area that we have in the front of the site here is where some of the employees would park on the left-hand portion of the site, consistent with the original application. And then there would be some internal circulation to access one building here. It's a small 1,200 square foot building, and then two somewhat larger buildings, but still significantly smaller than the original development, where there would be access basically through these buildings for maintenance and equipment management inside the buildings. Any of the site operations, equipment storage, staging, management of construction materials that would be used on site somewhere else would be happening behind a fenced-in portion on the rear portion of the site. So again, the limits of the pavement, the overall limit of disturbance, identical and a little bit smaller amounts of pavement and building than the original development. So I'll quickly walk through some of the site design elements here. We have our existing conditions. We also have been in front of Conservation Commission as well. So we did receive the amended order of conditions yesterday. So that was signed off on yesterday by the Conservation Commission.
If I can just ask anybody who's on mute to mute your lines, please, thank you.
Thank you. And the project has also been peer reviewed by the town's peer review consultant as well. There were some small things that we fixed in terms of the size of an outlet and some of the details on the plans. We responded, we understand there's no further comments from the peer reviewer. So the site layout that we spoke about again, some access and parking on the left-hand side. We've got the two main buildings in the middle of the site and then a smaller 1,200 square foot building. There's some exterior storage on the westerly portion of the site behind the fencing. We've also identified snow storage, which is one of the comments to pull that on top of the pavement so that any snow melt could be managed through the stormwater management system. On the right-hand portion of the site, one thing that is a reduction in the overall impact from the original approved development is there used to be some gravel and some paving in this area over here. So we're proposing basically to grade that out as was originally proposed, but leave it as lawn for the time being. So a reduction of the overall footprint and the impact on the easterly side of the site there. From a grading and drainage standpoint, we have a catch basin located in the rear of the site. It's a double catch basin that captures all the runoff from those paved areas and conveys it to a subsurface stormwater detention facility where the stormwater will infiltrate, identical to how the stormwater was going to be managed under the previously approved project, just right-sized a little bit to reflect the fact that the building was gone and the updated grading and drainage around the site. We also have catch basins along the front of the site that we deep sunk-loading catch basins as well as a water quality unit to provide treatment before it gets to the infiltration system. Similar design that we have on the eastern portion of the site, where we have some drainage inlets in the northeast corner here, as well as some closer to the entrance here, and the stormwater runoff from the building roof areas. We capture all that and provide the water quality. We route it through the subsurface stormwater system. Again, it was peer reviewed by the peer review consultant, went through Conservation Commission with review for conformance with the Wetlands Protection Act regulations as well as the town's bylaws. We're maintaining the 25-foot no disturb along the wetlands, so everything's fully compliant with the wetlands regulations. From a utility standpoint, similar to how the previous project was developed, we do have a septic system that's proposed to address the incidental amount of sewage that's generated from the project. As this kind of a contractor's yard, there's really not a lot of activity here in terms of employees, so there's not a lot of sewer generation. We'll be in front of the Board of Health for final review and approval of the septic system. We have done test pits for the stormwater as well as the septic system as well. All of those elements were designed to provide the amount of separation we want from groundwater. We have pretty good soil conditions here on the site as well that's conducive to both the stormwater and the septic system as well. We have water connections coming off of South Worcester Street, so all those will come off of services that provide water service to the various buildings in the site. The sewer generated from floor drains from inside the building, those will actually be captured in tight tanks and those will be disposed of off-site. And from a landscaping perspective, we recognize that the context of the site, similar to the previously approved project, we have a dense landscape buffer proposed along the entire frontage of the project. So there's really just the passenger cars using this portion of the site. There's a fence that separates where the main portion of the activity will happen in the rear of the yard from the front portion of the site. So we have that dense landscape buffer along the frontage that extends along the entire site. The original proposal actually had some loading docks and some more intensive uses along this side of the building. All that's now being pushed further back to the site, so that improves the relationship to the site context across the street. The dense vegetative buffer extends across the frontage of the site and wraps the corners as well. So we're really trying to improve the streetscape along that edge as well. That provides visual as well as sound buffer in that area. And then as far as the site operations, there's been discussion of the hours of usage of the project. And my understanding is the applicant is agreeable to Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. to dusk, or 7 p.m., whichever's earlier. So as it relates to operations, we're okay with those hours. There's going to be limited idling. They really don't have a lot of waiting trucks in this kind of facility. And they're going to be concentrated with the staff coming in the beginning of the day, and as they leave for projects, they'll be leaving spread out through the end of the day, and then just arriving in similar all city hours. And then the volume, we did provide updated trip generation analysis that identifies that the traffic generation is going to be a little bit lower than it was for the previously approved project. There's less building, less intensive use, so there'll be a little bit less impact on the roadways than was previously approved. And then as far as the building heights, they're consistent with the zoning, 25-foot max height, so everything's fully compliant, it's just modifications to the previous project.
I'll just ask one more time.
Why don't
If
we just
everybody on
mute
Zoom can please mute your microphone, thank you.
Especially here in the cold.
So that's what we have for the site design, I don't know if you want to talk at all.
Questions about our position?
I think from a general comment, I think something that we talked about a lot with the previous application was it's a unique site in that it's abutting a lot of residential uses as well as some industrial uses. And some of the industrial uses in proximity, I'll just say, do not have good reputation with the neighbors in terms of noise and in terms of general level of being good neighbors. Could you just describe kind of, you talked about hours of operation, kind of what is the day of the life at the site? What happens at the site? Is it a whole bunch of crushing rocks and construction, or is it something else?
Thank you for your time. We are not using this site as a processing yard. It's more of a laydown area. Our mechanics are from Coventry. They are traveling to Hudson, New Hampshire, and Acton, Massachusetts. So we're trying to get something closer to their location. So when we lay down jaw dies or anything in the sort, they can work on those. Those can get back on a truck and out the yard. The location is mainly to be a lay down area and have a little bit of workspace for whatever comes off of a site. Our other locations are extraction permit locations and processing yards where they're permitted. We're not going for that permit here. We're looking for this as a contracted yard and dry storage.
So contract yard and dry storage, so people would come to the yard, work on something, and then it would go back out in the truck.
Most likely, yes. So 7 a.m., probably 4 vehicles will come in and they'll go out, and then you have a field house mechanic that'll stay there, and somebody will work out of the office in the front, and that's a safety room for the crushing side of our company.
Additional questions for the applicant from the board here?
Mr. Chair? In regards to the eastern part of the property, which we actually have on the screen here, can you,
Where you were
it was fine where it was.
Okay.
Can you explain the reason for clear cutting that portion that was previously expected to be paved? It would seem a little bit more logical from a visual and sound barrier standpoint to leave it as is, as opposed to clear cut it and grade it.
We have no issues with leaving that open. We just left that as an opportunity. If we did want to utilize the space, we could with ease. We know that the drainage system is adequate to take on that location. Obviously, cost, it's not going to be on one of our primary locations, so we're trying to keep the cost down on the construction side, and the cost is a little bit higher than we were expecting, since we are going to pave the entire site, asked by conservation, because originally we approached a gravel yard in the rear, so we decided, since we're going to pave that, let's forego working on that side. But if that would be an issue, we have no issues with not clearing it. You could stay here. Clearing is a short value.
Yeah, that
From
would
us.
be my,
From a site plan perspective, if you think you might use it, then I would view it as, we can view it as, he may clear cut it at some point, but for now it may stay as trees. But from a, yeah, does that make sense?
Absolutely. Obviously, we're a growing company, and we have locations from New Hampshire. Now we're working our way South Shore, and space is always needed.
the storage areas in the back, what are they storing?
So we have, there'll obviously be trucks coming back with a little bit of material, so we have storage bins, so if they come back with a little bit of gravel or a little bit of stone, they can adequately put them into a 16 by 16 storage bin.
Okay.
And then, obviously, we have equipment that'll be stored on site and then off-site, but
But this is primarily gravel?
gravel, that'll be very minuscule. So it'll be mainly gravel, yeah, crushed recyclable or a 3/4 inch and a half stone.
Okay. Will it be loaded in the morning every day?
Probably not, but if it is, it's probably a 3 to 4 minute load time
Okay.
within the work start period.
Are the truck beds lined for any noise buffering?
No, they're not. So the primarily, short drop load, 3 minutes per truck is,
How many trucks?
in the morning, maybe 2, maybe 3, it's the max in the morning.
Okay. On the hours of operation, I noticed Mr. Schulte didn't mention Saturday and Sunday. So Monday through Friday is sufficient?
Monday through Friday, but we like to have Saturdays open for a buffer if they do have to come in.
Okay, just Saturday, not Sunday?
Not Sunday we do not work.
Okay.
Additional questions from the board?
Thank you.
Okay. Paul, are there any specific conditions from the original application that you think we should pay special mind to as we look at this? I know we've talked about hours of operation already.
Right. You're touching on them, the hours of operation, and again, because of the situation with the residents across the street, any, the buffering and trying to address noise and light, which their light plan didn't show any off-site light intrusion, but.
Plus they're stopping at dusk or 7, so that
Right.
is not a whole lot of lights needed.
No,
Yeah.
no, but just want to make sure that interaction with the residential area is addressed.
Okay. Is there anything else that you wanted to present? Otherwise, I'd open up just for public comment and questions.
I want to add that the designing of these structures are more of a residential use look. They're not a heavy industrial style, so and also we're keeping everything to the rear. These buildings will act as a lot of screen, so there won't be a lot of visual for the neighbors.
Thank you. I'll ask if we have anybody in person who'd like to come and ask questions for the board here. And if you're joining us via Zoom and you'd like to ask a question, ask you please use the react function in the Zoom meeting. If you can raise your virtual hand, we'll see it. And I'll try and go back and forth as needed between the two. So if anybody here in person would like to just come up and ask a question, or anybody on the Zoom meeting, I'll just ramble here for 15 seconds or so just to make sure anybody can find the mute button if they need to, or if anybody wants to ask a question. Not seeing any action either. Oh, there we go. Ms. Winston, I see you have your virtual hand up. If you want to just unmute and state your name and address for the record, please.
Debbie Winston, Elm Street.
Thank you.
I'm just curious. I'm very concerned, as I live on Elm Street, that the planning board is going to mess this up and risk our losing our grant. There is no way that town meeting is going to pass
This has nothing to do
this
with what we're talking about.
unless we choose a parcel that is unlikely to be built.
Ms. Winston, we're currently discussing a project at 360 South Worcester Street.
Oh, okay, I'll come over there.
No,
Thanks.
no worries, thank you. Okay. Anything further from anybody in the room or
Because
anybody
he's not
else?
here, I would have been.
Okay. So if we don't have any additional questions for the applicant, are the members prepared to vote with conditions? Do we want to continue to another session to have a vote? if we don't have specific objections, I think my position would be to try to move forward. Because we seem to be closer and closer to the election and town meeting, we'll probably snowball our agendas a little bit.
I'm comfortable.
My main concern was the traffic, and they said it's gonna be lower than what was originally approved, so I'm fine. I'm fine with moving ahead with the vote.
Okay. Okay. Anything else from the applicant that you wanted to say before we move forward? Are you comfortable with us closing the public hearing and moving forward?
Yeah, I think obviously we prefer to move forward, so if the board's ready to do so, we're happy to.
You mentioned you were done with conservation, that's always one of the things. Are you done with conservation? Is there a chance for a site plan to change, et cetera? But that's already happened, so,
Conservation's done, we're all set, so we should be good with the other boards.
okay.
Thank you.
So if we're comfortable moving forward, the next action would be a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Seconded.
Okay, thank you, Eric and Jim. Any further discussion on the motion to close? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have 2 members who are abstaining from this. Okay. And further action on the application for a modification to the site plan review.
Motion to approve modification site plan review number 3 with standard conditions and additional conditions as per the prior special condition or site plan review, with the exception of the removal of hours of operation on Sundays.
Okay. Seconded. Okay. I think we can look at the conditions when we write them up in our next session, if that makes sense, so. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve with conditions as noted. Anything further for discussion prior to a vote? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 2 abstaining. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is site plan SPR-13 and special permit SP-18 for 10 West Main Street. Something that I will add before we get into the discussion around this agenda item. This is a project which is currently in the Historic District. I know we may have members of the Historic District Commission attending our meeting this evening. Is anybody here in the room from that group? Okay. Do you know if you posted an agenda item for everybody to be here or no?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I'm new to the board and I haven't heard of it.
Okay. So I'll just say, if you're on the Historic District Commission and you're not sure if you've posted an agenda, I would ask that please feel free to watch. But I'd say if you're gonna have if you have more than 3 people who are watching, I'd ask that it probably doesn't make sense for anybody to speak, because you may be turning into open meeting law fun stuff, for lack of a more official term. So I think I saw a couple people join the meeting, and some of them may be on the Historic District Commission, but I'll just say that as a note. I'm not aware of everybody who's on membership of that committee, but, okay.
We have 4 here.
We have 4, so
Yep.
yeah, so I'll just, again, anybody on the Historic District Commission, my recommendation, obviously I can't make you, is not to comment in the public comment section of this application and wait for it to be in front of your own board. Okay. So with that out of the way, Mr. Riccio, I'll ask if you just want to go ahead and give an introduction of the project and what you're looking for, and then I'll ask the planner to give his review as well.
Okay, great. Rich Riccio from Field Engineering on behalf of the applicants, Old West Main LLC. I have Chris and Kyle Pernock here as well. They're the owners of the project. We're here before you for a redevelopment of the site at 10 West Main Street. This is going to be the first new development in the Village Center Core zoning district. The proposal before you this evening is for a three-story building with retail space on the first floor, about 2,300 square feet of retail space, and then 18 residential units on the second and third floors under the VCC district. They used to call it the top of the shop use. The proposed building will be serviced by water and sewer available on site. We will need to bring 2 new water services across West Main to service the site. The stormwater management facilities for the site will be proposed under the parking lot. We did go through a peer review with your town consultant on that and received a clean review this afternoon with regards to the stormwater management standards on that project. As the site plan shows, we're proposing 44 parking spaces to meet the uses within the building. There will be, this over here, 15 spaces along the westerly property line and another 29 spaces under the second and third stories of the building to meet the uses of both the residential use and the retail space. While the parking requirements in the VCC aren't necessarily required to meet the minimum spaces per zoning, we do meet the minimum for the uses we have proposed at this time with the 44 spaces. We're also proposing a fenced dumpster pad as shown on the plan, reconstruction of the sidewalk along the frontage, and concrete sidewalks to provide access to the site. The main access for the retail will be along West Main Street, and the main access for the residential uses would be under the garage, under the building. As everyone knows, the goals of the VCC district would orient the buildings as close to the street as we can to support public activity, safe pedestrian access, and try to fit into the downtown, the village area, and that's what we're hoping to do with this project. We do have a extensive landscaping plan that we've proposed, meets the requirements for numbers of trees along the frontage, and exceeds the numbers of shrubs and trees required overall. We have had discussions with the town with regards to the affordable aspects of this. I know in your planner's memo to you, there's a special permit requirement for affordable housing, and I believe it's 2 units or a payment in lieu. That's still an ongoing discussion with the town. We did receive your planner's comments on our submittal. We have added park benches along the frontage to comply with that requirement, and also concrete pads for bike racks at the ratios required for both the retail space and the residential space. There's enough room for 20 bike parking spaces on the site. We also did add a notation for wall pack lighting on the building to illuminate the parking as necessary. That would be shielded to minimize the spillover of lights. That hasn't been completely designed out as of yet. That would be done as part of the architecturals, but we would be committed to comply with any of those standards as part of the project. The other question was with regards to traffic circulation in and out of the site. As everyone knows, it's a tight, tough site. In order to improve conditions, we made sure the configuration of the site would use the existing curb cut furthest away from the intersection, and we'll be closing off the other curb cut that's located closer to the church. Also, we are committed to putting signage on the site to limit left turns out of the site during peak hours if, has,
I don't think anybody's gonna try to take left out of there during
Exactly.
peak hours. If they are, they're kidding themselves.
but that's part of the signage we've added on the plan. We will have to submit, obviously, a curb cut application with MassDOT, and the hope would be to move forward, get our local permits as soon as we can, so we can start that process. We did submit some traffic count data for the number of residential units and the retail spaces, and compared that to the existing traffic flow over there, and given the size of the site and the number of units, we feel that the impact would be minimal on the overall numbers that see that intersection on a daily basis. And I mean, that basically summarizes the project. Look forward to questions from the board and the public as well.
Paul, can you just give just an overview of your summary in terms of the projects, in terms of what relief specifically that they're seeking under the board, and then any of your comments?
Sure. So there's two permits they're seeking. One is a site plan because there's three or more. And again, I should back up and say, one of the things we were trying to achieve with Village Center Core was more efficient approval process, and certain things which would normally be a special permit or a site plan. So top of the shop housing in this district is by right. So multifamily itself did not trigger a special permit, but what did trigger it was the affordable housing requirement, because if we have 6 or more units, it triggers the affordable housing requirement of 10%, and that is by special permit. So the special permit requirement that you would be looking at, the criteria is, are they providing 10% of the units, and are they doing it on site or payment in lieu or some other options? And then there's the site plan.
Okay. And overall on the, actually, sorry, any other comments from you, Paul? Mr. Ritchie mentioned you acted on a couple of them already.
Right. I would just step back about 5 years when we were working on this, and Chair Allen, you were both with us helping to create Village Center Core, and you recall, as Rich was saying, we're trying to create a more vibrant area here. So it is, I was excited when they came forward with this. I mean, we were trying to create, more of a center there, and a top of the shop with a requirement for first floor retail. So it's kind of exciting that it only took 5 years, but we're here. And in our world, that's a short time between the sewer. Should also, point out too that the sewer line was put in there about 5 or 6 years ago as well. So this is one of the projects that happened because that sewer was there, along with some other things that have happened in that area. So this is, certainly those two things you'll be working on. This is not in conservation's jurisdiction. It's not within 100 feet of wetlands, so we were managing the peer review. And as Rich said, the peer reviewer looked at stormwater. There was some correspondence back and forth, but the peer review was fine with it. This is also within the historic district, so we've begun coordinating with the applicant and the Historic District Commission to have them review it, and they have to issue a certificate of appropriateness. My understanding is they have not yet quite set their public meeting, but they're in the process of doing so.
Okay.
Mr.
And
Chair.
in terms of I was going to say, Paul, from the historic district perspective, what they would be looking for is everything. What is in their purview, what is not, what changes could we potentially expect in best/worst case scenarios, just in terms of, since we have 6 weeks until the April election for this board.
Right, so they actually have some pretty broad jurisdiction here. They can even deal with new construction. They can obviously deal with architecture. They can look at the lot, the area, and determine, look at size and scope. They can even add beyond the zoning bylaw. So those are aspects that are within their jurisdiction that they will need to review and make a determination.
Wide
So in other words,
latitude would be the correct way to look at that.
I'm sorry?
Wide latitude would be the correct way to
Right.
look at that. Okay.
Right, I would just view them as you would, say, conservation, where they could affect the footprint. Historic district can as well.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, can we go back to the special permits quick?
Sure. So I think there's a special permit for affordable housing
Yep.
only, and then there's the site plan. That's it.
What about water protection district? I thought, I read in Paul's memo, it's in the water protection district. Doesn't that require a special permit also?
Oh, that's true. Yes, it's in zone 3 of the Water Resource Protection District.
So it's not the well area or the area that feeds the well area. It's the area that feeds the area that feeds the well area.
Right.
Yes.
So my apologies,
So-
that's another one.
There's a few boxes to check in that also. You have to notify conservation.
Right,
I don't know if they
Mhm.
were notified, and I think it's Board of Health notified.
right, they're all
They're all good.
notified. So again, there too, you just have to make sure you're not having an adverse impact on the aquifer. So this was the same situation we had a few years ago with Cumberland Farms. Just very different situation, so they're not proposing underground tanks.
Yes.
So that'd be we'd have to vote on that also, so.
Yes,
Thank you, Al. I
Mr.
think,
Chairman, I just have one thing. We are meeting with the Historic District on the 25th of March to discuss this project. Both the owners and the architects will be there.
the 25th, so in 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks, yes.
We have opposing meeting dates apparently, don't we? I guess.
yes.
Yeah. So you won't be here on the 25th, obviously. So we would look, when we get to early April, we'll need to understand just a path forward that we take between the two boards with that. So that makes sense. I think you read my mind when you moved to the next poster there. I was going to ask about what does the building look like? And in terms of, we talked about first floor retail and parking underneath, how, we're talking about residential units above, how many of them, how many bedrooms, et cetera.
Correct. So there's 18 total residential units, 9 on each floor. There would be 5 two-bedroom and 4 one-bedroom units on each floor. They'd be serviced by a central elevator and 2 stairway access egresses from the ground level. The elevator is located in the central part of the building itself. I don't know, do you have the ability to put this on the screen? The rendering? Okay, great.
Did you want that, or did you want the internal?
I think this is good to see, the pictures.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just get that for you.
So the intent would be to match the architecture of the church building, try to match what's existing downtown, down in the village area with the same materials of construction on the facades and such. A lot of white, a lot of black, white and black contrasting colors. The underground, not underground, the surface parking below the second and third floors, as you can see in the rendering, is pretty well hidden, and that's the intent of it. Like I said, looks like there'd be a lot of glass along the front on the lower level for the retail spaces, and 3 entrances off to the front, and then there's also 1 entrance off the side to the retail side of things, the ground level. And like I said, there's also the main residential entrance from the parking garage underneath for the second and third levels.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions from the board here?
There you.
You.
Ah.
Steve?
There's a few of
Oh,
us.
Steve first,
Okay.
and then Rob, you
You actually asked my question,
Okay.
so I'm okay.
Alright, well, first off, I'd like to say, like, this looks great from your end. I have a technical question for the board. Going forward, this is the first time I would be approving a top-of-the-shop housing and doing so in the Village Center Core District. Am I to assume, and the board to assume going forward, that top-of-the-shop housing means any type of housing by right, or only the housing as reflected in the zoning district? If the zoning district says you can have a single family home by right or in a duplex by special permit, do you need a special permit for the housing above the top of the shop? Or does it supersede that special permit and just make any type of housing by right?
So in the village center core, top of the shop housing is allowed by right. We don't designate the number of units tied to it, so theoretically, under what you're saying, you could just do retail first floor and 1 unit above, and that would be by right, unless something else triggered a special permit.
And so my reason why is because in the village center core we don't allow a single family home, we don't allow a duplex, we don't allow multifamily, we allow a bed and breakfast by right, we allow a tourist home by special permit, we allow senior housing by special permit, and we allow hotels and motels by special permit. So for this top of the shop, does that give us the ability, it supersedes the no of the multifamily and gives us permission as a special permit to say, yes, a multifamily can go above here? Is that what, like,
You
This
feel like
sounds-
there's a conflict between the two lines in the use table, between top of the shop being allowed and multifamily being not allowed?
there's
Is
a conflict and a precedent to be set. And I have not done that yet, so I want to know what the rest of the board feels about that.
Okay.
No one's done it yet.
Right.
I think part of the answer is in the definition for top of the shop, which is residential use located in the same building as non-residential, where the non-residential use occupies the ground floor and the residential use occupies space above the ground floor.
If I could use that same logic, does that mean that any commercial use, including those not allowed currently in the commercial zone, would also be allowed at the bottom?
If it's a use that's specifically prohibited, then no, you would not be able to do it.
So multifamily is explicitly prohibited.
Right. But in essence, you could have multifamily as long as you have commercial on the first floor. It just can't be multifamily alone.
Does the board feel or recognize any conflict in that?
That's how it was intended when we were talking
I-
about it.
I understand your confusion.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's.
I agree with the intent of the project, but there is like the idea that it says no explicitly. Am I allowed to grant that?
Sorry, Steve, could you restate that, please?
Well, because it says no explicitly to multifamily, am I allowed, by saying top of the shop housing, am I allowed to grant multifamily? Or am I restricted only to the types of housing that are currently permitted within the district?
Oh, okay. So you would be able to do, so as we define multifamily, it just means that in the village center core that it's residential only,
A standalone?
a standalone. So, but what they're proposing is multifamily.
Sure.
It's just has the commercial component on the first floor.
And that was the intent of what you guys did 5 years ago.
Absolutely.
With, okay.
Yes.
I think what you're looking for,
I'm-
Steve, is like a clarification in the use table that would specify no star other than top of the shop or something like that.
I agree with the concept. I just want to say that we're all setting a precedent going forward. When a top of the shop comes up again, we have the board going forward, whether it's us or other members, are going to have wiggle room to put multifamily on top or not.
Right. No, I understand.
So-
Yeah.
As long as the board's recognizing that that's where we're going forward, and maybe going forward in the recode, we add a little bit of clarification to the definition.
Not that we need to add more stuff to the recodification.
Sure.
Yeah.
Tim, when did we have the dentist office? Was that at 4 units above?
Yes, down on right across the street
That's
from Oak
village
Street.
Village
commercial,
commercial.
not village
Village
commercial
zone.
core.
Good thought, Ben. But yeah, so I think the point of clarification is well raised.
Cool.
So, yeah. Additional questions for the applicant at this point?
I got one quick one. Fire department, have they looked at this and signed off?
We had a preliminary meeting with the fire department. They were in that meeting and they've looked at the layout and everything and didn't have any major concerns.
Do we have any
I think,
paperwork from them?
I think
It
I
wasn't-
saw in Open Gov, there were a lot of departments that said like review in process.
Correct.
So if we can
We
turn
usually
those
we
to
have a-
review completes.
Usually we have a turning analysis with, I don't see how they access part of the site, like the rear of the building, the side closest to the church. It just seems like they would have an access problem. Not that I would ever speak for them. I just want, usually we would see some type of turning radius or something
Yeah.
with a development like this, especially with a lot of residential involved. Definitely want an email from them or something from them.
Yeah.
We can get something from Jason.
Yeah. And if it's not reflected in the application system, we can see like in process or check complete. So I think
They haven't checked it yet.
there's a few that aren't check complete across different departments, not just fire. So I think we just need to tie those off. So.
Just to let everybody know, I did speak to Chief Robbins. We discussed the turning radius of the truck going in, and he was fine with it, the way it was laid out, so.
We just can't go by there. He was.
Yes,
fine with it.
understood, but they know all about it.
Yep.
Okay. Additional questions from the board, Ms. Parker?
Can you point out on the display plan where snow storage is going to be, please?
We would be going in the open green space areas in here and back in this area, back in here. If there's not enough room, we'd have to contract with somebody to truck it off site. But I mean, the site is pretty limited with what we can fit there.
Where are your deliveries and loading for the retail shops, please?
They would have to pull into the parking spot. I mean, we're not expecting any kind of intensive retail use.
Coffee shop still needs supplies.
Right, no, I understand, but it would have to take place off-site, off the street, in the parking area.
Where is the residence guest parking?
There are, I think that's laid out on the architectural drawing.
Because it seems to be the parking spaces that are all under the building are assigned to the residents.
Correct.
And you have retail parking.
My
Where
assumption would be the rear of the site. But
there is no rear of the site. They're using every square inch of that site.
Yeah, we have, if you look at the parking plan that's on the screen, there are 1 through 7 through 14, 18. There's 2 visitor spaces on the back corner near the dumpster spot, and then the spaces along the side would be available for visitors when they're not being used by the retail.
Okay. I don't mind the use. I'm glad there's something going in there. I do have an issue with the scale. It seems like the space was maximized at the sacrifice of functionality. This is it's a difficult lot given its placement and being so close to a really difficult intersection to begin with. I think there's a need to be thoughtful about the design because of the location, and I think there needs to be, cars should be able to, without having to 3-point turn in a few different occasions, should be able to navigate, and they can't even get from the back to the front. There's no way to turn around here. The functionality of the site seems suboptimal to me for traffic flow.
We did provide turnarounds for the cars in the residential parking garage. These bump outs here are paved so that they can back out and leave.
Okay.
Same thing with here. These are going to be reserved for the residents underneath. There won't be public going into those parking spaces. And then the parking spaces along here, the access aisle has been designed to accommodate pulling in and backing out of the spaces.
Yeah, I'm just even thinking about something as simple as trash removal. you're going to bring in a trash truck to empty out the dumpster, and it's just going to cause chaos. You're going to be blocking all kinds of parking. You're going to be blocking that whole back section of parking. Are they going to back in from 123? I mean, how are they even emptying a dumpster?
This is the dumpster pad here.
I get it, yeah. So they pull in, they do
Pull
it,
in,
yeah.
and then back in, and then pull up. If they
Okay.
do it from the back side.
Yeah.
Or the
And-
same thing if they do it from the front.
yeah.
Yeah, some trucks will pull the dumpster back up and over. It's a front load.
The flow of
It's
this
tight.
site
Yeah,
is just, I'm viewing it as suboptimal. But I'll let the historic district weigh in a little bit further on that. Can we request a traffic study for a impact on the level of service for that intersection?
They provided traffic counts and, yeah. I mean, I think having seen enough traffic studies and the volume that goes through that intersection, my expectation is whatever you're gonna have coming in and out of this site is not gonna make a dent in the overall volume that flows through that intersection on a daily basis.
I'm thinking
The
about
challenge
them.
is that when you have a difficult intersection, why are you putting more there?
Right.
Is the argument that we've gotten with other projects in the past, which, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't think it flows very nicely. In my opinion.
Okay.
But I'm gonna let the historic district weigh in on that.
Additional questions from the board?
I got a couple more quick ones, Tim. The back 8 parking spots, accessing those from underneath the building, is that the idea?
Yes, yes.
So they're in and out from
Yeah,
underneath
you
the
see
building?
those dark dots?
Those are columns.
Those
I
are the
assume.
columns that are lined up with the parking lines.
Yep.
Yes.
And then, this is the landscape plan, correct?
This does show the plantings. I do have a separate landscaping plan.
So we do have some considerations for buffering. Is it residential right behind? I believe it's,
Right here.
butts a couple
Going back
residential.
onto Seminary Way, maybe?
I don't know if it goes to seminary, but
No, there's
No.
a Wheaton House.
There's a couple, there's at least
housing
2
back there.
houses. We do have some
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
buffering,
never mind, I'm off, yeah.
buffering considerations between districts.
There's actually going to be a solid fence. We're relocating the existing fence there to the property line.
Yep.
I think, are we putting a new, or we just, yeah, like the white, the vinyl? Yeah. There's going to be a screening fence across that back property line to the residential use as well.
I think might need to look in that wetlands protection district. There's some buffering guidelines in there that you're gonna have to look at. It's just, you can't buffer a project like this from residential, I guess is what I'm getting at, no matter what we do. The fence isn't gonna do it, planting's not gonna do it.
From a visual standpoint.
From a visual standpoint. From a noise standpoint, I don't think it's gonna be a problem, but my recollection in that wetlands bylaw, district bylaw, there is some buffering guidelines possibly.
For wetlands, I didn't think there was a,
Can you just,
Water districts.
oh, okay.
can you just take a note, Paul, just to review if there are any buffering guidelines with that permit?
That's for the special permit for the zone 3.
Correct.
Additional questions or comments for the applicant? Otherwise, I'll turn to public comment here.
I'm gonna need to step away for a second.
Okay. If you don't mind, Mr. Chair, I'll just go to public comment here. If there's anybody in person who'd like to speak or anybody who's joining the Zoom meeting. And again, I said at the beginning, members of the Historic District Commission, I'll ask if you please hold your comments and save those for your own meeting to keep in compliance with open meeting law. Can you just state your name and address for the record, please?
Hi, Christine Carmichael, 15 Barrow Street. I am also a volunteer at 18 West Main Street, which abuts the other side of this proposed property at the old schoolhouse. We're a one-room schoolhouse, very small, and looking at this gigantic building, I think we're not going to have a view of anything besides the walls of this building and some cars out in the parking lot. We are a nonprofit organization. We have tours within the building. We have school kids come in the building. And one of the things we show, because we are in a historic district, now the historic district is different from the historic society, we point out some of the landmarks, including the church, which I don't see how they're gonna see that over this large, well, actually, the rendering picture, I don't know how they're gonna see that over this building. The town common we point out, these are all very important historic facts because we needed that church in the commons where the first church was in order to be established as a town. We have a lot of historic buildings within sight of this building, and I think that is going to kind of take away from the New England charm of our historic buildings. They're going to be seeing this huge, large building that maybe belongs in a city, not next door to a little one-room schoolhouse and a, very old 1834 church. The other thing is that we have a concern with is the fact that there's 18 condos here, and they don't have any outside space really except a couple of benches. And we're a private organization. We have a yard which I believe starts where those cars end. And we've had trouble with tenants on our other side with the kids playing in our backyard. They're guest parking in our parking lot, and we're a museum. We're not a playground. We're not a place where you can walk your dogs and leave their stuff behind. So we're concerned with the number of units in that and the fact that there isn't a lot of space. And with only 2 guest parking, from what I understand, that doesn't seem like a lot when you have 18 condos that are going into this. I think that it really needs to be scaled down. We've been asked numerous times to give up some of our land for parking, and we use our land. We have events on our property, and all I can think of is Joni Mitchell's words from Yellow Taxi. They paved paradise and put in a parking lot, which is what we're going to be seeing, the parking lot in this gigantuous building. So I just wanted to let you know that I think this is kind of large for where it's going. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carmichael. And
Dean Swicker, and I'm on the Board of Trustees for the Unitarian Church, the abutter. I just want to
And-
confirm,
just to confirm, you said you were on the Historic District Commission?
yeah, but I'm not going to talk about that.
I think you're still getting into dangerous territory because you have other members of your board joining the meeting. So if they hear your comments, then it comes into deliberation.
Okay.
So I'm not trying to shut you down. I just don't want you to get in trouble. So.
Yeah, I don't want to get in trouble.
Wise man.
Mr. Sweeney, please.
Mark Sweeney, 14 Laura Lane. I'm sorry, I'm just coming in for the first time. Did you guys talk to the state about this property at all?
In terms of?
If they want to straighten out the intersection of 140 and 123 and get rid of the jog and all the backed up traffic, and if we, and again, not to skip to another meeting, but if we put in the MBTA and bring in 750 units, that intersection is going to be madness. It's going to be, it's already backed up to the school one way, backed up to the fire station the other way, way past the post office another way, going back past the baseball field on 140 that way. So what I'm getting at is right in between the church and this building, 3-story building, how many units? 18 units? Anyway, if that's put up, that eliminates an idea of having the 140 go straight away
kind of
to the, you know what I'm saying? It would go like right in between those buildings. You don't want that building. And then have 140 go straight away. They would have to have eminent domain with 3 buildings right in back, including the New England Telephone Exchange building, whatever you want to call it.
So
so
I know that was
that's
an option. I know they talked to Verizon. They said it would cost them 7 figures to move that site or something like that.
But if they're still
So
using
it's-
that type of technology, I mean, that's going back.
That's a whole, yeah.
Okay, but if they take that 3 properties by eminent domain, they could straighten out that street, or that intersection without having to jog. So you better consider that. I would hold off and at least talk to District 5 down in Taunton there, from Mass DOT, and see if they have an idea of going, once they fix North Worcester Street, South Worcester, the next idea is this property here in Norton. So if they come in and you put in a building like that, they're gonna throw it up, and we're gonna be traffic city for the rest of, for eternity in Norton.
Understood.
Thank you.
Okay. Additional comments from anybody here? Okay. I know we talked about how the Historic District Commission has wide latitude in how they're gonna look at this building. So it's gonna be interesting in how we look at this site plan as they look at it and as we look at it. I think we're just gonna have to play that by ear unless anybody has additional thoughts.
I'm gonna comment, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
sorry.
if you just put your mic down so they can hear you.
Because I am on the traffic committee, I know the proposals that are being considered, and I don't want to speak to which ones are being, how much, but I think this building actually misses them because of where they've taken the road. I don't think we'd be looking at a situation where we then want to send a road right through, but they just put up that building.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Rob. Yeah, I know that's been an ongoing discussion for decades in terms of fixing the center. If it was simple, it would have been done a long time ago, so.
Look up the rotary here.
Okay. So I think, unless anybody has anything further, Mr. Ritchie, if you want to come up, I think my feeling would be that we would want to continue this until after they've spoken to the Historic District on the 25th.
Absolutely.
So it would be our first April meeting here. Is any objections to that from the board?
No.
Paul, you think that makes sense?
That would be April 1st.
Okay.
Motion to continue.
Any objections to that from your side?
No.
Okay.
Motion to continue to April
I
1st.
thought we were holding April 1st unless it was needed. Do we need it?
There's
Or do I have my dates backwards?
April 8th is that.
Sorry, my apologies.
So the first won't just be a joint meeting, it'll be a regular meeting for us and a joint meeting.
It'll be lots of fun.
April Fools.
April 1st, best day to do all this.
Yes. Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue to our April 1st meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. We'll see you in a few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now to the main event this evening, continued discussion on the MBTA community zoning for potential town meeting. And I just want to clarify that this is not the noticed public session with all of the parcels having received their notice that we voted on last session. So we're continuing discussion. Anybody all the property owners for those parcels that voted on the last session, I think just got their notices within the past few days or so.
Correct.
So that would be our next session, would be when all of those residents would
Have a
be-
chance to come in and
Exactly. So I think today, what I'm looking to, I think, potentially accomplish is Paul had sent around his updated review from Serped, looking at the parcels that we noticed, looking at how big they are, what they include, and then potentially take some swings at the language, since we haven't really touched on that significantly. We want to make sure that we do look at that and speak to, I think, some of the feedback that we got at town meeting and other things to ways we should potentially look to refine it. So, Paul, did you want to start and just give an overview of the review that Serped had done and go from there?
Sure. I'll just jump right to it. Just share that. So after you all had selected the 5 areas, I went ahead and directed and asked Serpent, our regional planning agency, to calculate the compliance model for it. So what I'm going to show you real quick are I combined 274 East Main and Red Mill because they're adjacent to one another.
But we can handle them differently. You just put them on one slide.
Right, you can handle them differently, absolutely. So with Norton Glen, based on their calculations, this would be 25 acres. They modeled that you could potentially do 343 units, behind 150 are there, and that you would have the net of around 193. So this could be a good area for, meeting half of that requirement. So Mansfield Ave, they modeled 32.5 acres. They modeled that it could potentially do 481. Again, this is just a numerical calculation, not what's going to happen there. So you could, this one could also be another good one for if you were looking to split it. And in fact, if you combine Norton Glen and Mansfield, we could get to 57 acres and 824 units. So this could give you an opportunity to shave a bit off if you wanted to get closer to it. Again, that's an option. Just wanted to provide you with some of these options. Barrows, 138 Barrows. This is 25 acres and it modeled at 405 units. So as you know, there's no residential there, so this would be a full increase. I'm hearing still that Mass Military Support is looking at this site. Yeah,
there's nothing there now, and
right.
The odds of sewer going there between slim and none, and slim just left town.
Right. So I looked at 138 and Norton Glen, and we just missed it. It's unbelievable. We got 50 acres, but 2 units too little. I mean, we could recalculate that if we wanted to do 138 Barrows and Norton Glen. The benefit there would be you'd have 2 different elementary schools. But I also looked at 138 in Mansfield, which does have the same elementary school. That option would help us meet compliance. And then just in this case last, Red Mill and 274. 274 is 14, almost 15 acres. It modeled at 237 units. But Red Mill would actually exceed the standards. In and on its own, it would do it. 51 acres, 831 units modeled. And so you could see there that Red Mill alone could do it. You could combine it, but certainly what we're hearing is don't do that. So you have some options.
Okay.
You have a number of options to choose from.
One of the things that I noticed in Serpent's review related to the Glen is they're talking about the subsidized housing inventory.
Right.
And it currently counts for 150 units under our affordable counts, correct?
Correct, 150 units, yes.
So this may be this is a question just in terms of how all of that works with the state. Serpent said the deed restrictions look like they're expiring in 2033.
Right,
So
yes.
right now, those properties under a deed restriction, they have to be affordable. After 2033, they could do whatever they want. Do they need to come back to us to meet affordable housing under the regular bylaws, or no, or?
It depends what they do, because this was approved as Section 8 housing back in the early 70s. So we've had, other than building permits, I'm not aware of any approval that the planning board's given. I've looked into this and couldn't find it. But again, one benefit, if this area were to be designated, this would become a conforming use again. But, so this was, Norton Glen in around 2015 or 16 was, their affordability was re-upped with I can't remember who their subsidizing agency was. So that's where that 2033 deadline comes from, was the deed came from an agreement to continue with the subsidies. So they could continue that process, but that's through essentially through HUD.
So we have no control over what that does after 2033?
No,
Okay.
no,
But
we were not the party to it.
I got a question. You said the Glen and Tweed together come 2 units short.
Yeah,
748 was the calculation.
right, I'm just trying to get there, yeah, yes.
Now, for your Norton Glen calculation, did you include the little side section, not the main parcels? There's like a couple.
Just the ones that were off of Norton Glen Road, the ones with development on it.
We didn't notice the other ones.
Right, you instructed us not to
Not to
include
put
those
that
vacant
in.
parcels.
Yeah, on the paper street.
Yeah. We could potentially look to, there might be some thing we have further in the compliance model if we wanted to choose this and we wanted to not do something else to nudge something a little bit in terms of a setback or something.
Paul, with the deed restriction coming off in 33, would that make this more desirable for them to start over? Because they don't have that deed restriction anymore?
It'll depend on what their business model is. If they're an affordable housing developer, then, I mean, the benefit to them there would be, again, now if they wanted to do something, if they wanted to add more, or as these units get older and they want to rebuild, adding this.
They would have
district.
more options instead of just low
Right.
income.
Yes,
But if they did try to go under this bylaw, they would need to meet the affordable housing that we put into it,
Right,
which would be 10%.
right. Or
We
a
cannot-
payment in lieu of.
but
Right.
this is
We have-
100% right now.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this is deeply affordable.
Yes, and I will say, we cannot require that it's 100% affordable.
Agreed.
The state already said no.
So one of the things to consider there is that could drop our affordable housing stock to below 10%,
Mm-hmm.
which.
But we have no control over it, and we can't force them to do
Understood.
anything, so.
It's just something to consider.
Right.
So in 2033, if they don't re-up, then somebody's gonna.
We could lose it then regardless of what we did with it tonight here.
Right.
Correct,
Yep.
exactly,
Right, absolutely.
okay.
I'm just worried that that makes it more appealing to actually build on and start over. Because there wouldn't be
I
a
don't
cap
know.
necessarily, so to speak, on what they could slap the village commercial on it and still have apartments or condos and have a way bigger,
You mean, they could take the MBTA,
yes.
they could do that, and they would need to meet everything that we lay out here.
Right, but
which is
again,
the
it would
case for
go,
anything.
right, but it would go from 100% down to 10.
Could go to 100% down to 10, no matter, even if,
Right, but I'm saying
what
if
it is
we,
now.
right.
It doesn't stop them from doing it, they could just
but putting
say-
the MBTA overlay on it changes the zone, which would give them more freedom to do that, no?
It would, yes.
That's what my
That,
concern
Without-
if they wanted to add some more,
It would
if there
give
was
them
opportunities, they could do that
options,
too.
especially because they're not a conforming use right now.
Right.
They're
That's
kind
why
of
they can't rebuild
stuck. Yeah,
without the MBTA.
yeah.
But
They could
there are,
probably continue as the use that they are, not under subsidized,
Mm-hmm.
which may or may not be feasible. So, but just something to consider, and I wanted to call it out with how we look at this from a long-term perspective. So, we looked at this. Any other specific comments, questions, or concerns from the board in terms of looking at the numbers of this, looking at everything else, understanding that at the next meeting, we're gonna have all of the owners and abutters available to comment as well.
What's the lowest net option that we have?
That would be probably Red Mill.
I think we have that. I have that.
That would probably be Red Mill because it's already built out fairly densely. I feel like East Main is with the parcels that we've noticed, East Main doesn't help us anywhere. Because it's 15, so you need
Right.
other stuff, you need a third zone to do anything, basically.
The back one.
You need to do like a
But-
partial somewhere else to
Right.
make it
But
better.
all those other options are too, well, most of them are right over, just over 50, so this doesn't,
Is
274 really doesn't give us
Is Red
anything.
Mills net increase 678 units overall.
Well, again, modeled, it's just the modeling
And it's
exercise.
multiple parcels, so we could, actually, we can't shave much because it's 51.
Well, condominium, this becomes real tricky. I don't wanna bore you with the details, but technically I think it's one lot, and then you have all the condos have their own individual lot numbers with it.
So it's all or nothing.
Like a cluster development?
Well, no, clusters would still have their own parcel ID numbers. I mean,
So there's no
it
way to
does, but-
shave Red Mill, it's one, we treat it as one lot,
Right.
basically, okay.
Right.
So it's 831.
If somebody tore everything down and started from scratch and built to maximum capacity, yes.
Right, but when we proposed TPC and it modeled at whatever, 1,000, you know, we had quite a bit of pushback on why you're giving them more.
Yeah, but I think that, yes, I definitely remember that, because
Yep.
I was,
I'm just pointing out we have a
But I
similar
think-
situation here.
no,
The
but I
net is
think
less.
because it's not empty, I think
Yeah.
there's, that discussion is much,
Yeah. They do have open land though.
Can they build on that open land? It's not
Most of
all
that-
conservation.
Most of
right?
that's a conservation restriction, so the 51 acres,
Is only where the condos are currently?
I believe so.
Can we confirm?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
you were aware I had a presentation I wanted to give.
Yeah, is there
You could
some,
pick the best time.
yeah, if you wanna share it, you can.
Are you done with yours?
Yep, yes.
Take the screen from Paul, I think we kinda touched on a little bit all about our.
We
but
kind
if
of
you wanna
did, so I was
yeah,
going to continue.
yeah.
Not speaking up. Let me take share. Just make that come out as well, so.
Yeah, it's kind of.
So, taking this from the beginning, this is basically, and I'm gonna suggest this is a reality. We have a lot of people in this town, and I do not support this, I argue with some of them about it, that wanna just say no to anything we come up with. They've already decided they're gonna do that, and they don't care what we come to town meeting with, they're just planning on saying that. Okay,
Are you on the right page? Because
He's
I know you
getting
said from the beginning, but it's.
He's getting there.
it is the beginning.
Yeah, he's just got a title slide. He's good.
Okay, and then, this is, yeah, I see it's showing up kind of weird on the screen, I don't know why, because I have the full screen going on here.
We can see it. You're good.
Okay, but this is, but the part that's cut off is, this is how to make it past town meeting. I think what I'm suggesting has maybe a 40% chance at best, but is still, I believe, our best and only chance with what the reality we're facing with the community's opinions. Moved, I don't know why it's not moving.
Huh. Maybe you got a multiple screen thing going on.
Presentation.
Yeah, I'm in presentation mode, I don't think it's showing my presentation.
He's seeing a full screen on his, so it's probably like a multi-monitor thing going on. Yeah, it's a Mac. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. The wonders of technology.
Well, I don't want to spend time fighting.
Yeah. While you're pulling that up, Paul, I'll just say, Rob, to your point, to the point of people saying no to everything or not wanting us to comply, I think
I don't
my
agree.
position is that that's a decision if there's been lots of discussions about Rentham is suing the state, Middleborough is suing the state. I think that's a decision for the select board to choose. I think our job as a board is to act as if we need to present this at town meeting and get it approved. And if the select board makes the decision to pursue alternate actions, then they'll be part of that process with us, so. So there we go, I see it, Rob, now.
Okay, let me just take it full screen, and then I'm gonna go back on my own. So this first slide, I think you guys have seen before, but I'd point out, not increasing the multifamily footprint in Norton. We're just not in a position to do that. We need to avoid it. We also need to retain our valuable commercial land infrastructure, especially the prime spots, and encourage and facilitate actual commercial and retail business. We need to regain that balance. That's what I commented. The next thing, we have the imbalance. It puts a lot of expenses on the back of our homeowners. You can see whenever we need more money, it's coming up to increasing taxes on residents. We just, again, we do not have the balance of commercial for what we're trying to do to be a town. And then the final thing, we need to fully comply with the state mandate. I realize a lot of states are fighting this, and they've got some pretty good arguments. I would like to be on the sidelines for that. That's my opinion. Let that be someone else's fight. So I'd like to comply fully with it in a way that is highly unlikely any of this gets built. And I think that's our best scenario is we comply, we keep our grants, and we've complied in a way where there's challenges to building it that are they're gonna be showstoppers, and I'll get into what that is in a little bit. In that case, we are basically watching this whole fight the other towns are having on the news. Mildly interested, but Norton's not spending money fighting, we're not losing grants. It really just kind of keeps our noses clean, let us live in peace. So that's what that does. Okay, next one. And so this is what this suggestion does do. We could certainly shade it some because it's up to 57 acres. You can see a little spot off on the left edge there. We could shade that in if we wanted to. This is Red Mill Village and East Main Apartments combined. East Main Apartments is fairly new in the big picture. That's reasonably new development. These are filled units. The value of that asset makes it prohibitive to purchase it and replace it with something else. What they want to do would not make the money. So it's just financially not feasible. And that's the real thing that is going to stop folks from doing it. Red Mill Village is even tougher for them. Like we just covered, it's an all or nothing. These are individually owned. You have to sell every single person there to say, yes, I want to do this, or you can't get it all. And so what this will do is make Norton compliant. It saves us the grants. We're not losing anything. And I will remind, this town does not have money to burn. We're running on the edge there. So not losing the grants would be better. I'm sorry, Debbie, it keeps the Elm Street grant.
I want
She's not
the
happy
Elm
for
Street
that.
Bridge.
Oh, you do now? Okay. Write that down. I think we should look to keep the grants, and I think all these fights I'm reading in the news, I think the towns have some good points and all, but I would rather just not be involved. And I think that's better for Norton to just not be involved and stand to one side. I also think this, as I set up in that first slide, has maybe a 40% chance at best of getting by the town because of all those people that want to just vote no with no further consideration. I think the only possible way we're going to get them is if we can sell them on the idea that we've got a plan here that nothing's going to happen. And for this reason, we don't worry about the school distribution because it ain't going to happen. We don't worry about, I think I heard some concerns about traffic. We don't care, it ain't going to happen. And I do think that is the way we need to approach this so that we have complied with the letter of what they've done, but it ain't going to happen, really. We're not going to take on this extra expense on our town.
Yeah, I think it's a well thought out proposal, Rob, and I think that's one of the things that we'll look at as we go through this. I think we haven't talked to anybody. Red Mill, I think, just got their notice, so they'll be at our next meeting.
Okay.
Probably with at least a couple of representatives to speak to it. I've been to one too many meetings where somebody said this will never. I was told this would never get built to promise anything.
Similar to what you're saying, like on Tweed and things. Oh, it'll never get built because of the sewer.
But I didn't say
this
the sewer there,
okay.
but yeah.
But I do, Mr. Chairman, believe this to be a stronger never get built proposal.
And we can evaluate it. Yeah, I think I mentioned as you were getting the PowerPoint up. I think the decision on whether the town looks to follow Rentham and Middleborough, I think that's something that the select board will have to weigh as part of their kind of responsibilities. Our job is to get this to where we think it can go to town meeting. I think I'm more optimistic than the 40% you're going with, but I had a good cup of coffee today, so,
Well, I think other things I do where I hear a lot of feedback.
yeah. No, I
And a lot
understand.
of people have suggested, actually, I'm wasting my time even trying to bring this.
Could we get a build out done for this property? Because it does look like there's a decent portion of it that's not wetlands or conservation.
Yeah, I'll,
I wonder how many buildings could actually get.
but I think
put
that was
there.
all factored into their calculations, but I'll.
Sure,
I'll
if they're
ask them
allowed
to break it
600
down.
and something more units, they can fit in a decent building there. They probably will, but just I'd like to see that build out
Of
scenario.
course, you know, it's a condominium association, and with anything else, it's the property owner's
Yeah.
desires, what they'd like to do with it.
Sure.
But I'll see if I can break down more on that.
Thank you.
Remember, anything that starts costing Norton more money could ultimately add to or lead to tax increases. You know, we just got by the override thing before, we're doing cuts now. If our expenses go up, we're gonna be back at the well for that again. I don't think we will do well, it won't be received, so I think it's madness for us to go down any path, I'm sorry, Massachusetts or anything, that's gonna take on additional expense and burden on the town right now. And if it did take it on, it would manifest itself in a tax rate increase. And I'll point out for residents of Red Mill, I know they're not exactly the poorest people on earth, but still, a lot of them are living fixed incomes, they don't want to see that margin cut it off. Not worry about going bankrupt, but,
I see you, 1 second.
Okay.
I was gonna say, any additional comments on, we're not gonna vote on anything? Additional comments on parcel specific from the board here? Otherwise I'll go to public comment.
My only question is, we don't know how many people actually live in Red Mill, do we? Yeah.
You say
I assume that
150
we-
something units?
I think there's 150-some
Well,
units,
that's
some of them
units.
are probably multiple
Obviously.
person units,
Yeah,
I'm
I
sure
was
we
just
could,
wondering.
I'm sure we could get a number if we wanted to, but obviously there is no school district burden from that area.
Correct.
Right. In fact, they've age limited people under 18 cannot, with certain exceptions, so there's essentially no children there. But single, if, single person or couple, I don't know, but it's 156 units.
Yeah.
But also, when we do it by acreage, it's 57.9 acres. And so,
There may be some aspects of the parcels that are,
Right.
but yeah,
But if the
that's
trust,
what the circuit analysis is, to
right,
keep us
that's
on
just
track.
Trust their compliance modeling based on what the states.
we'll hear
for
their
them
costs,
is.
we'll hear what they have to say.
So, please,
Hi, Bridget Carr, Oak Street. I have a question. I don't know if it would be more helpful for you to bring up the slides, but a lot of people in town, I think, based on what the previous town meeting comments and all the forum comments, what I'm seeing, I feel like, is people stuck on the 750 new units. But you guys collectively as a board have been talking about making the net new significantly less, with the exception of Red Mill, which I think was just brought forth tonight. But before tonight, I feel like the net numbers were significantly lower than 750. So I just wanted to know if we can clarify that, I guess. I don't know.
the net new has always been, previous town meeting, there was nothing on the site.
Well, yeah,
So
yes.
everything was net new. So when we've looked at all of these, we've had columns for, okay, you have 50 acres times whatever, it's this many units, there are this many already, so there's a net calculation going into all of it.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to point out too, when we talk about how many units here, these units are individual houses, where if somebody started building multifamily on it, you're gonna get a lot more units per there, and that's why, when you
In
have
theory,
57.9 acres, you do fall within that calculation.
Yeah. So I see two other comments here. If we have additional comments on the Zoom meeting, I'll ask people to raise their virtual hands as well. So if somebody wants to come up in person, then I'll go back to the Zoom meeting after that. I see you, Mr. Siegel. I'll get to you next.
Zach Tillis, 3 Richmond Drive. Did I misunderstand it wrong? Mr. Giuseppe's slide, he said just Red Mill Village would make you compliant. Is that correct?
Yes.
So why would we go any more what Mr. Walsh has up there and extend it to the apartments? If Red Mill Village makes you compliant.
I
We may-
agree, my own calculation did not say it did, but if
Okay.
I was mistaken in that calculation, I would agree with your point, why add to it? Because I am looking to minimize.
Well, and I just want to add, we were looking at these other sites too, because some of those sites were recommended by the public through some public engagement as well. So the board in the next week, and in fact, with the joint meeting with Finance Committee and Select Board, we'll all be making recommendations on the areas to choose. So right now, it's still open as to the areas that are, that are still under consideration.
Okay, thank you.
I was gonna go to the Zoom meeting and then, Mr. Siegel, if you wanted just to state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Maureen Siegel, 28 Cotting Road. I thought this meeting was going to be dealing with the bylaw itself. I'm happy to try to get into the specific
We'll get there
location.
too.
Okay. Well, a couple of things that were stated that are incorrect. One, Red Mill Village by itself is 51 acres, 18 of which is conservation land, so by itself would not qualify. Two, East Main Street is a 40B project. We fought with the help of actually Bob Kimball, and we got them to reduce the heights of the buildings along East Main Street, reducing their site by 44 units. Were this to become an MBTA project, they would have the ability to increase and build back those 44 units cost. But again, those are rental units, and they could do that over time, and they could increase that by those 44 units. The other thing that I think the town needs to understand is for all of those other sites, it's in most cases making them compliant, but they're not compliant. Norton Glen, as you all know, is basically a 50-year-old project. And for us to sit there and say, let's not give them some incentive to make them come into the current century and improve their site, while adding, granted, some students, I think is a missed opportunity for this town. And we get focused so much on trying to accommodate commercial and retail space, yet this board basically let the developer on Glennon Street walk away from the idea of putting up retail space. And so you keep on being focused on getting more retail into the town and then say, well, we don't need it there. If you look at all of the sites you're looking at, Mansfield would become compliant, Glen would become compliant, East Main Street would become compliant. Right now it's a 40B project, would become compliant. You're looking at just this site, and of all of them, we're the ones that have no issue with gaining anything by this. And in fact, you got to understand, right now it's a 55 and over community. And if you wrap around this, the ability of putting another project that's multifamily, we have to be selling our units, and somebody buying our unit, having that as a backdrop is going to affect the value of our property in terms of being able to resell it. You may not think that's the case, but that is true. Also, you need to understand, by a vote of the association, we can remove the 55 and over restriction. Right now, the Red Mill Village has 72 3-bedroom units, and 80 2-bedroom apartments. More than half of the units are multifamily by themselves. There are 2 and 3 and 4-bedroom units attached. There are a couple of standalone units, but there are more than, I think, half of the units are attached units. And were they in some way to be able to accommodate switching over to multifamily and qualify under this bylaw or some amendment to it or some reason for it, you would be adding, by a vote of our organization, 150 units with multifamily housing. That you can say that would never happen, but I would just caution everybody, given our current administration, I don't know whether you're going to be able to guarantee Social Security is going to be there, Medicare is going to be there, or or the Medicare is going to be there. And if that were the case, the value of the ability of our community to sell our units and to resell our units, or to find other people coming down the road, might diminish. And so converting, if we can, and I'm not sure we can at this point, but converting, as I said, to multifamily would not be beyond the scope of what could happen. Basically, of all the other locations, everybody else benefits by this. We're the only ones that don't benefit by it, and not only don't we benefit by it, by having it as an underlying overlay district, we may in fact discourage people from buying our units. And that would be a crime. That really would be. And so I would encourage this board to reconsider its approach. I think you're taking the easy way out. Basically, you have a lot of opportunity to actually, in an appropriate way, develop this community. You've got a lot of units, not all of them on Mansfield Avenue, could benefit by the ability to increase their lot size. The owners themselves can benefit financially by being able to utilize some of that without a major impact on the town. And I get tired of hearing, it costs X for a student and we get Y from taxes. You know what? This town has never increased its tax base. And I've got to just tell this town, speak myself, if I were trying to if I had any children looking to come to this town, and I see them every year reducing the school budget and the number of faculty in the school by 20 every year, and by closing a fire department, and by closing the ambulance and the police department, you're never going to get, you're never going to keep this town alive with vibrant new people and young people. The school population is dwindling. So for you to come back and say, well, let's find the least likely to do it and the most likely to be impacted by that decision negatively, and let's put it all on them, is just really sad for this town. But you also the two things you're looking at in terms of Glenville Avenue and East Main Street, they're both rental properties. So you're picking the big three on our side of 495 that have mostly rental people who don't respond to anything, and a situation where it's housing senior residents. Good look, guys. It's a real good look for this town. And I would encourage you to reconsider the approach that you're taking when you're including Red Mill Village, because I think the people will be upset with that decision, because I think it really speaks very poorly for the town. Thank you.
I understand your comments and your thoughts, and I know that all of the notices just came out, and they'll be noticed at our next session, and definitely there'll be more comments and discussion. I think everybody on the board has different feelings about how we're going about different aspects of this, so I appreciate your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speak.
Sure.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. So, Oren, I want to stress again, and you seem to know that because you were commenting on how we picked the place where it just wouldn't get built. That is correct. That's exactly what we're doing. And most of the objections you just raised would pertain if it was getting built, but it's not. So,
I think we can get into the logistics of how it may or may not happen a little bit more, because...
Can I finish though?
Please.
Thank you. So, no, it's not going to get built. Now, as far as that creating a lot of those problems you think it's creating, it would only create those problems if it got built or even started getting built. So I encourage you to consider that. As far as having this hang over, I mean, we've been talking about putting it lots of places, it's been fine. It seems like specifically affecting the Red Mill Village residents seems to trouble you more than other places in town, but so be it.
He's a resident of Red Mill Village. So
oh, okay, fair enough.
So, yeah.
Fair enough. I just knew that one really triggered a whole bunch of objections that didn't exist over other places or impacting people in other places. But the thing is, when it's not getting built, you're not getting impacted. And the impact you've got to worry about, especially if you have people on fixed incomes, I know you guys have maybe good budgets, better off, but still fixed is fixed. And if this town has to increase taxes, that impacts you. This makes you the master of your own fate. If you realize that you want it there. And I don't know how to tell that to you any more clearly than that, but you actually want it on Red Mill Village because that gives you that ability.
I think everybody could come to their own conclusions and.
Right, but I get to
yeah.
speak. Thank you very much.
Yes.
So
I think that
I know
we're good for now.
please.
So, I think
You can't tell a
personally,
person
I
how he feels.
am probably telling other people
Sure.
how they need to think. So
Right.
that would be.
Okay, but it was correct. I don't have a problem with it, just to be clear, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Winston, did you want any comments?
Please bear with me. Mo nearly died Thursday night,
She's had a tough week.
but I have questions. Mr. Chairman, one, I want to comment and thank you for coming around from 1,700 units to 750. Two, for complimenting Rob because he single-handedly stopped the 1,700 units down to 750. I know you don't like it, Rob, but the facts are the facts. So it's very nice to see the board have reason, because I kept hearing you say, we worked on this a year, we worked on this a year and a half. I don't understand why sites that are unlikely to be built, Orrin, weren't considered in the first place. So that speaks to leadership. So I'm questioning that, number one. And the only reason this number two comes up is because of that number one. It concerns me gravely that this board is going to make yet another mistake and not present it at town meeting where it's unlikely to be built, Orrin. That's why Red Mill is in the mix. And it's very disheartening. I'm sure you weren't out there fighting for all of Elm Street not to be built. Which leads me to the third point. If you bring a buildable lot to town meeting, it's gonna go down, dead on arrival. And that means we lose the grant for 47 Elm Street. That's over $3 million.
It doesn't.
Why would we do that?
So Debbie, just for clarification, that $3.5 million wouldn't be affected by us being not compliant. We have confirmation from the state.
Really?
So that's changed, Bob?
No, it's grants going forward, Debbie. It's, the past ones do work, it's future ones that won't.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Debbie, we were previously told that, but apparently it's not true. So just, we can move on.
Oh, we were told that,
But
but
we
it's
can move
not
on,
true.
sorry. We can move on
So
from
this
it. I'm
speaks
giving
to
you the acknowledgement.
leadership. And the other woman who was talking, we want our old town. There has to be a way to balance it all. No? So I plead with the board, be smart with what you bring to the town meeting. I'm on Elm Street. I would like 47 to be taken care of. Or, just like you, I don't want to be forced to do
Wait.
something.
I ask that let's not call out people by name, let's,
Okay. I guess that's it. Thank you.
thank you. Mr. Sweeney? Yeah? And I'll do another call for anybody else who's on the Zoom meeting who'd like to speak. Please use the react function to raise your hands,
Please
please.
here to tell me where I can stick my plan.
Mark Sweeney, 14 Laurel Lane. What is the net for Red Mill Village?
It's around 600.
And what about with East Main? Are we at 8, like?
If you added East Main, in theory, from the compliance model, Red Mill by itself meets the requirement for MBTA.
Red
So
Mill
add-
by itself?
Correct.
Okay.
In theory, on paper. We haven't, again,
It's
Red Mill
over-
Village net residents were just noticed, they're not here this evening.
It's over 750.
Yes.
All right, so if we go, Laura was saying, a little pushback. Yeah, we pushed back, or Rob pushed back very, as Debbie said, on 1,500. I don't think we're gonna push back if it's 800 or something like that. It's just a matter of where we put it, that's the important thing.
I think as Rob, I could say, I don't really want to be singled out like that. We're a board.
We're bored.
Sorry, man over to the third.
No, I appreciate the plug. Thank you.
So, I'm the guy that's gonna basically tell you no at the meeting.
I know.
You know what I mean? I can just see where it's going, the vibe of the town, and just what's going on. It's gonna be a no. Your job is to put something there that is not gonna be built. You might get a yes, and then we'll be compliant, we'll have the grants. Or it's gonna be Middleborough, in Rentham, and Norton. That's the way it's gonna be. We may not officially sue the town, but chances are, we are not gonna vote for it this spring. So you wanna put something there that this board all agrees to, such as option 3, such as Red Mill, East Main, however you wanna look at it. Right there is one of your members presented earlier tonight. Did a very fine job, by the way. And at least tell the people there, this is what we're offering. This is what we came up with. We did our job, and I know that's what you have to do. You have to present something. It's not going to be built. Tell them it's not going to be built. It's option 3. It's not going to be built. Then you might get a bunch of people that say, okay, I'll vote for it, but it's actually kind of like a no vote. You know what I'm saying? You're voting for something that's not going to happen. And you'll get it passed, and you won't have to be part of Middleborough and Rentham. But if you present something that is not uniform, you probably should do it 7-0, that type of thing, and uniformly, you'll be unanimous and vote for something that the town is not gonna go forward, or no developer's gonna go forward with. Then you'll get a yes you could get a yes from the people, I guess you wanna say, and have the vibe switch to your side, if you wanna say it. Vote yes here, because it's gonna be a no in the end, they're not gonna build it. And I'm sorry about if that's not the best thing that for the gentleman that was speaking earlier from outside of the town hall here, but I just think you have to vote, again, repeating myself, just vote option 3, and you'll have a chance of it passing. And we won't have to go down that road of lawsuits or whatever, or lose the grants, which we don't want to lose, especially if they're fire grants. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
if I could just weigh in for a second. We held a public hearing where we asked the members of the public to tell us where they wanted it. And the 123,495 parcel came in 6th. And I have to call into account that FinCom at their last meeting was specifically disparaging us that we were not listening to the public. So I don't understand how we are now at the 6th option of the public being up for discussion weeks later. We're in a situation where damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. No matter what we pick, you're going to have an issue with it. It's just whichever particular issue happens to fit with your narrative.
I think if there was an easy choice to make, we would have made it.
Yeah.
And I think that no matter what this board puts forward, there will be people in town who disagree with our choices.
We're
no matter what
literally
we do.
damned if we do and damned if we
That's
don't.
why we're on the board, to make those decisions as best
But
as
I
we see
take
fit.
objection
That's
to
it.
people on other boards who have not shown up here saying that we are not listening to members of the public. We had a specific hearing for this exact purpose where they were ranked choice.
No, it's not.
And right now, we're not listening. If we go with option number 6, we are technically not listening to the public.
Not true.
No, I think I understand your point, Laura.
There's
we all
no
had
answer
the
here.
ability to. We all had the ability to nominate parcels to be noticed as part of this process, and that's what we're doing. And we'll continue. And all those notices go out. We'll have all of those owners and abutters able to be at our next meeting to refine that selection further.
I'd like to speak.
So that's, yeah, no, I understand.
I just take objection to
And-
people saying we're not listening to the public. We've been doing this for weeks, listening to the public, and the public keeps wavering on where they want this thing.
And that's why have started turning off social media, so.
I'm talking about just in this
No.
meeting alone.
No, I
In
understand.
open meeting.
So, I understand. So,
I would like to say something if
I'll
possible.
go in the board and I'll come back to you, and there's a hand on the Zoom meeting as well, so everybody's coming around again.
So when first given this task, I was in full support of trying to find the least likely place they would actually develop. But I'm not gonna feel comfortable looking at any resident in town and giving them a guarantee that nothing's gonna be built. I won't do that. I'm trying to state that I don't want it. I'll try to vote for a place that's unlikely, but I'm not gonna throw out if something does happen and something does change, I'm not gonna be tied to the fact that I told the public this won't be built. I won't guarantee that. Like, it's irresponsible for anyone to say that it cannot be built.
Thank you, Joe. Rob, did you have something else that you wanted to add? Rob, did you have something else?
Yeah, first of all, Jim is right, we do not want to make a promise it won't get be built, and so we want to always phrase that high likelihood won't be built, or in my case, what I've said is, here's the obstacles that I personally believe nobody will get over for it to be built. So I do agree with this point, and we should watch our language. But that is what it is. Now, as far as the comments about listening to the public, if we listen to the public, we actually just throw this out and go to town meeting with nothing, because that is what most of the public is saying right now, is they just don't want it. What I'm trying to put forth here is a plan to possibly sell some to the public to make us compliant. I don't know that it'll work. When I gave it 40%, I think even what I suggested is gonna get voted down. I do know there's people here in this room that have already told me I'm nuts and that we're just going down. That is how we got to this. It was by listening to the public. It was not by rejecting them. They aren't so much picky as where we put it, as long as they just don't want it to happen. Putting it nowhere is actually their first choice. I'm trying to dissuade the public off of putting it nowhere.
Thank you. Ms. Carr?
At Bridget Carr Street. I've seen a lot of the public saying the no thing, but I also think there's probably a good portion of the public who is in agreement with this board, which is pretty much an agreement, I think, from all of your forums and other meetings where you're all trying to do the same thing. I feel like a lot of times you guys get stuck here and it's a lot of back and forth and running around the same circle. So I just want to voice that there are other people who have different opinions than that. And I would also have a question about how, going back to, I can't remember the street, Mansfield Ave and the Glen, how many net units is that again? I just can't remember.
It's,
With Paul
I want to say
Getty.
the,
Paul's Getty.
I want to say the total, I want to say the nets, I'm going to say it's about 500.
Yeah, combined,
Yes, please.
so combined, they're 57 acres, and again, the model units are 824, so that puts us over the.
And the net is.
In the net from there.
Oh, the nets, I'm sorry, the nets for Mansfield Ave, we'd be, again, about a 313 unit net increase. Although again, most of this, there's one lot that's vacant, and that number's gonna be, I have to be cautious to say, but this is not vacant land.
Right, it's
built.
occupied land with existing multifamily, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So
That
that-
was
oh,
big,
sorry.
no, it's okay, that was a big contender from the sport before Red Mill got brought back in. I just wanted to kind of touch on that again.
And so Norton Glen is a net of 193 units.
Okay, so combined less than Red Mill, theoretically?
Theoretically.
Or net, or net
Theoretically,
increase, sorry.
theoretically,
Yeah.
the redevelopment potential of Mansfield and,
Yeah,
So it's like 530, I was pretty close.
yeah, so.
okay. Alright, thank you.
I know Mr. Sweeney and Ms. Winston were looking to speak. I have Mr. Siegel on the Zoom, so I'm just going to go to him real quick if you don't mind. Of course. Or if you want to just state your name and address again, please.
Sure, Orin Siegel, 28 Cottage Road. Just one item to clarify, if you're looking at Red Mill Village as a standalone, again, it has 51 acres, 18 of which is conservation land, so it by itself, I don't believe would qualify. because it would only have something like 30-some odd acres. That's without taking into account parking spaces and the like.
Thank you.
So
Yeah,
it's not sufficient.
yeah, Serpent had run the compliance model on that. So we'll rely on their data on what is and is not allowed from conservation perspective in that as we go forward, but thank you.
Their run was both combined with East Main Street and Red Mill Village.
We'll get it broken out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was shocked to hear that Red Mill would meet it on its own. My own calculations didn't come up with that.
Yes.
We'll
break it down.
we'll confirm that before the next meeting.
Mark Sweeney, 14 Laurel Lane. I'd like to speak to your member that was talking about listening to the public. I was here for that workshop, and I think I picked Wheaton, I picked Barrows, because one of your members was like, hey, this is a good idea, this is a good idea. Wheaton, Barrows, and 140, Mansfield Ave, on the, if you want to call it, on the duplex side. And I said, oh, those will be good. Especially, I was thinking that this thing would go to Barrows, actually. But then, further conversations, because when was that workshop? 2 months ago? Something like that?
December.
December even?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Pete. So it's
before Christmas.
Yeah, okay, so 3 months ago. But in the meantime, discussions with people, and, he was just talking it over with different people, and Red Mill looked like even better because, again, you can't just, sorry, one of the members said, we won't promise. Again, yeah, you can't promise it, but it's highly unlikely that it will happen. So when I picked those three earlier, back in December, throw them out the window. I'm going with Red Mill. So yes, things do change over the last 3 months. Yeah, I was one of those. I didn't like it, didn't care. Red Mill, that's a stupid idea. Now it's probably the #1 idea. Things change after 3 months.
It's our job as a board to take into account what we've heard over the last year and a half of this process and synthesize it into how we vote as we move forward.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
I was going to go to Debbie.
Okay.
I'll speak to the same issue. The woman who brought up the concern about the public was the one at that meeting trying to persuade everybody. Not once, but twice she directly lied to me. And this board put forth that we would lose that $3 million for Elm Street. So don't tell me that if the board votes for our #1 Red Mill, that the public isn't being heard. Be honest. And the citizens have a right to know that a member of the board did that and lies directly to people's faces. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
I think she gets to go next.
Yes, Ms. Parker.
may I share something that's posted publicly?
Can I ask what it is?
Yep, it's the President's report on their financial statement for 2024
From Wheaton College.
for Wheaton College.
Okay.
We didn't notice Wheaton. We haven't included them in their selections.
I'm taking
I
objection with
understand.
being called a liar.
I understand.
I have informed them it is public knowledge. If they don't want to look for it, I feel like I need to point it out.
Mr. Chairman, I said.
Please, I'll let you share it, but I understand where you're coming from. No, but then I'd like to move on and continue the discussion about the bylaw.
Then I need to know what I was lying about.
We will not have argumentative discussions, members of the board in this forum. Please, Ms. Winston. Thank you.
In fairness, I think she should get to respond.
I'm asking yes, I said, Laura, if you'd like to share it, you can, and then I'd like to move on.
Okay.
We covered it in a previous session.
One moment, please. Oh, I can't. There we go. Apologies.
Take your time.
I got it.
I'm not in a rush.
Okay, this is Wheaton College. This is the letter from the Vice President for Finance and Administration for fiscal year 2024. This is on their webpage. Third paragraph down. Wheaton ended the year with an unrestricted operating deficit of $8.5 million, which was a $0.43 million favorable change over the prior year, which means they had an operating deficit of another $8 million, which is why they started selling properties. So I was trying to point out that a institution that is having financial difficulty and has already been selling properties, they may not be the most ideal to put in here because they could very likely be put up for sale because 3 of the parcels that they did sell, 2 of them went to residential housing developers, 2 of which came before us. So I don't know what lies you are referring to. I've referred people to the public website and their financials, which are online. So thank you, and I await my apology for calling me a liar, please. Thank you.
That wasn't the only reason you were called.
We're gonna move on.
I'm sorry
please.
for it. You deserve
We're gonna
better.
move on.
Thank you.
Okay. So, I think we've covered review of the parcels. Are there any additional clarifying questions that we want to get from Paul or Serped, other than breaking out Red Mill and East Main in the analysis prior to our next session?
I'd sort of like to point out that since Wheaton has been disqualified for other reasons anyhow, that we never have to bring it up in these meetings, these discussions again, in any context.
It's a good point, Rob.
Understood.
I really just want the bottom line number. What's the lowest net increase that we can put forward? And that's my biggest factor that I'm gonna weigh in on.
Okay.
And I think, Paul, when you said there's some vacant lots on the 140 side, we could even shave the vacant lots out of what we're putting forth for the town to even limit that even more.
Right.
If that's the parcels that we select, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So anything else? Parcel selection? Yes, no, otherwise I'll move on.
He's fine.
Okay.
Okay. So,
Jeez.
moving on from parcel selection, Paul, you had shared around the language again. Again, we do not need to vote on this at this point, but the bylaw language is another aspect that was discussed heavily at town meeting. So, in terms of changes that we want to see in the bylaw language for this time around, I was going to suggest, and I know these were well-intentioned the previous time, do we want to strike everything and everything that talks about the density bonuses?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Consider it struck. I will do this live.
I understand the intention that we had behind them. I understand the amount of thought and effort that we put into them. I think that it is not passable at town meeting, given the current discussions. That leaves the maximum height at 3 stories with no exceptions, which I think is generally what we're gonna need to do to meet the density requirements of the bylaw anyway.
I have a question about that. If we set the height for 3 stories and it's built in the commercial zone where there's 4 stories, is it restricted? My thought was
They'd have to choose which zoning they're building under. So they're either operating under the existing zoning or they're operating under the overlay. They can't mix and match from both.
Correct. You pick one.
But do we need to include a maximum height, or can it just rely on the underlying district? It could just match whatever district it's in.
Since we're creating our dimensional tables, I would put a height in.
I know that's one of the things
That's
that's
an
in
option.
what I've lovingly called the spreadsheet of doom of the compliance model.
Right.
I know height is one of those things that is part of it.
Okay.
So it takes setbacks and heights and all of those things and goes, okay, in this lot you can build this many. So.
But I just want to check something on the height standards, just so we're clear, because just want to see the height for,
Village commercial's 45. Commercial's 45. I think.
that sounds right, so,
Residential's 35.
let me just get to the table. So, yeah, the heights,
Yeah, it's
If you're,
65 across the
if you're
board.
scrolling, I'm not seeing a scroll.
I'm not sharing that part yet, but
Okay.
45,
It's 65 with chimneys and
Yeah.
domes and spires and towers, etc.
right, so 45 in commercial, 35 in residential districts, since a couple of those are in residential. But again, you could even create a, so if we went to, say, Mansfield, which is zone commercial, you could set a different height. If you use different sub-districts, you could also set a different height if you want to do that. But yeah, 45 and then 65 at the maximum height, 3 stories, but they are limited to 3 stories for both village commercial and commercial.
So again, like just we have to put in a height for compliance modeling.
I think number of
Or-
stories, I think, is the. I
Because
think that's
it's
the-
3 stories, but if we just leave the height blank, it can just match whatever district it's in? Or are we saying if it's in the commercial, do you lose 10 feet of height by building this kind of top of the shop?
No, because they've not, let's see. Because if you're using the overlay, the existing zoning doesn't matter. So there's not a maximum height specified, they can go to whatever 3 stories they want to do.
Right, so
Doesn't matter where they're putting it, the only rules that matter are within these pages. Not whatever else is going on in the commercial zone or anything else.
The overlay doesn't completely negate what's in the underlying district. It just supersedes any settings
It gives the owner an option. They can choose
Right.
one set of rules or the other.
right, so if, for example, they wanted to use the overlay district, you'll see in the language, which we already had, which was if there's any conflict between 2 different zoning districts, that the overlay district would supersede.
Okay.
If they chose that.
Yeah.
Provided they did.
Yeah, provided,
They use
right,
that
so
zone.
basically you take an avenue, you either go with your base zoning or you go with your overlay district.
It's not a pick and
Okay.
choose.
Yeah, yeah. So you could, I mean, if you wanted to, and depending on how this all plays out through town meeting, one standard might be a good way to go, because it might be tough to predict where this ends up in terms of areas selected, so if there's a standard on height, and I would say also lot size, we want to look at that.
Yeah.
I
I
think
was gonna say that the other piece that we touched on at town meeting was lot size and building size. So the language that we created previously was designed generally to encourage somewhat smaller lots and somewhat smaller buildings.
I agree with that.
So if that is what we want to put forward and what we want to allow, not necessarily someone needs to do it that way, but allow for somebody to build smaller buildings if in fact something was going to be built. Or if we wanted to go independent in the direction and say, if you're gonna do this, it's gonna be a big building, which is what was proposed at town meeting on the floor. That makes it maybe a bigger lift to get something done, but when something gets done, it's a bigger drop, rather than somebody added a couple of triplexes.
I think I'd rather go small.
So,
myself.
I don't think we need to vote on that at this point, we're not, but just something to think about as you look through the language, as you look through it, and think about it.
While we're on the dimensional tables, could I ask a question?
Yeah.
The maximum building plus parking coverage. So buildings with less than 10 units, we're allowing 70% coverage. buildings with more than 10 units, we're only allowing 60% coverage. And I'm wondering, it seems counterintuitive, but there's got to be a reason for it. Because you'd need more parking for more units. Is that so that the building would be smaller? Was that the intent?
My understanding, and Paul, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that if you had, let's just imagine this as a bigger apartment building where you have a parking lot or parking underneath the building or one parking area that's dense and you fit all the spots in it. If you compare that to 4 townhouses, you're gonna have little bits of driveways, and each per townhouse is going to want its own 2.5 spaces, and maybe they want an area to put a boat or something like that, so you get more potential for somebody wanting parking with a smaller lot. Am I?
I think so.
Potential more open space for a bigger building.
Right, that would be the other trade-off with the reduction. You know, essentially what.
Because they don't have little yards, you can have a big yard for everybody.
Right.
Okay. So think about it as providing them more open space as opposed to restricting their ability to put more parking in.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
The other one that I would add, Paul, is we put the maximum units per acre at 16. I'm not sure if we put that at 15, which is the minimum required by the state.
Well, remember, that was placed there, Serpent recommended 16 just to create that buffer. So it's still a maximum, but just because of the numerical, I mean, I can ask them to take a look at calculating at 15.
That would, in theory, require us to do more acreage.
Which might get more people upset.
15 would require, could potentially require more acreage.
Okay.
16.
So we can leave it alone for now.
Yeah.
16 is the buffer they recommended that would help put us a little bit over. And again, that is a maximum units.
Right.
We just need a good answer for that.
Yes. And the answer that we just got
is what it, yeah.
Yes. If you want me to set aside more land for this or not.
It's a trade-off.
Yes. Right. That's the answer for that.
Common sense isn't so common.
Okay. Did anybody else have discussions on the bylaw language they wanted to bring up after reviewing it?
The uses in the top of the shop building?
Yes. Paul's just scrolled past it, I think.
I can barely see it.
Right there. Yeah.
I don't really have much of a problem with it, but the one thing is the full retail and full restaurant. If it's in the commercial zone, those things are going to be allowed anyways.
They would be under the existing zoning.
And if it's in the residential zone, those uses might be a little too intense. I'm not sure if like a full Applebee's or a Walmart, those would qualify in those uses.
A Walmart?
It's just retail.
Okay. Yeah.
It's
in
scaleless
theory,
retail.
In theory, you could put a mini Target in one of these.
So
yes.
With a maximum height.
Yeah.
Right.
I would have a challenge, I guess. In theory, it's hard to distinguish between, in terms of a restaurant, how do you determine between...
Well, we have artisan food
How do you
and
determine
beverage.
between Tasties and, as you said, an Applebee's?
Artisan
The line
food
on
and
there-
beverage, I think, is our distinction.
I don't
where
think
it's a small
Tasties would
shop.
qualify, though.
Yeah.
Small bakery?
I don't know. It's tough.
Minimal production?
I think, but I think also if they wanted a liquor license, they'd need to go before the select board and need to show how they weren't going to become a nuisance.
Sure.
Point out also, Applebee's is probably not gonna wanna get involved in that type of a location.
Probably not,
Unless it's
but-
just, well, that would be a big change from Walmart's business model too.
Yeah, the idea is...
The theory that there's no limit there.
It's a good devil's
I
advocate
get what you're
discussion.
saying.
Yeah.
Those are the only two that I'm sort of wavering, where if we made this district without those uses on there and then amended it at a later meeting to make those
Without-
by special permit or something.
And that's the commercial food use.
Yeah, just the full retail use and the full restaurant use, nightclub use.
Yeah.
that might be too intense, and it's already allowed in the commercial. So if it's placed there, they can build that building anyways.
So I just want to make sure I'm clear what I can remove if the board
I think it's-
wants me to do so.
I think the
commercial,
under commercial food use, I think the discussion is, do we want to restrict some of that? I think I want to think on it more, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I don't mind at all, but I'm just those are the two that stand out as like possible.
Yeah, you just flag that as a, that's,
What are you using for a threshold though?
that's tough, we don't have a,
You'd have to put in a square
Square
footage
footage,
threshold
yeah.
if
Right.
you wanted to do something like that. That's the
Yeah.
only way to limit it.
yeah, we can.
Well,
think
that's
about
why I
it.
sort of I went with like more like a smaller boutique style thing, a little like they have that artisan
You have to
manufacturing.
give
which is
this.
like,
You have to think of the building inspector interpreting this chart though, and not us interpreting it.
right,
You know what I'm saying? It has to be
sure.
some type of definitive.
Could we maybe?
I like to use myself as the idiot for the idiot test.
Yeah.
That I mean, could we
With
like,
your judge, yeah.
limit the retail space to like a certain square footage, or the restaurants like whatever commercial use is limited to a
What
certain
capacity?
Yeah.
And then we're getting really in the weeds with it, but that's.
But
how
then you have to
do it.
then you have to imagine what the size of the building's gonna be, so
Right.
it's, I think there are points, I forget if they made it in the final version, we talked about how much retail you could have.
we did,
So that's, I think, maybe where we look at that, so.
I feel like I wouldn't want to limit any commercial use.
well, all top of the shop and mixed-use developments must have at least 50% of the project's gross square footage dedicated to residential uses.
And I think the first floor is limited to, has to be is at least 65%.
Okay.
Do we need those percentages? Do we want to require at least 50% residential? Like,
I think it
what if
needed,
it's
I
own?
think it needed to be,
Why do we want to mandate any percentage of residential?
because it's top of the shop.
Well,
This
yeah,
is
but
multifamily.
could they build like 10,000 square feet of space in just one unit? And like, why do we need it to be 50% of the whole building?
I feel like there were requirements under 3A where it needed to be residential, I forget.
We have to allow, well, it's allow multifamily by right.
Allow, but not require.
I think you're right.
We don't need to require a certain percentage of residential space. Well, if they only want to use 25% of the building as residential, or let's let them.
Which helps our number.
Well, it doesn't help the number.
If it's
The number on paper is
80%
the same.
In theory.
commercial
good.
space,
The
that's
number on
great.
paper is the same.
On paper.
That's the only number we have.
Yeah.
So the number on paper stays the same.
Right.
No, but I think
And the likelihood that you're gonna do
There's-
more on the residential on this
discussion
is
around
much
that, I
higher
think.
than the commercial. Commercial real estate's everywhere like right now.
I would
Like,
just like, Paul, if we can just make sure if there's a requirement under 3A that like, that forces us to do something in terms of how we treat residential in these
Right.
properties, that we just make sure we're complying with that.
Okay. While we're in the use table, one of the
And I do
things-
see your hand up, Warren. I'll get there in a second.
And I think, Steve, this was a comment you had provided in beforehand. I just want to make sure, that we resolve that, which was with top of the shop housing, and we initially in our draft had mixed use development as well. And Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but were you proposing deleting mixed use development or
No, clarifying.
clarifying? Okay.
What the difference? Mixed use says that the residential use has to be above the commercial. Sorry, the top of the shop says residential has to be above commercial. Where mixed use would stipulate that it could be arranged in any format. Doesn't necessarily have to be above or below.
Right, correct.
But we don't have that definition written anywhere, so that's why I'm not sure where we're. Unless we're adding it to just here to say that the definition is that it can be.
Yeah.
Like the back of the building can be multifamily, the front can be commercial, but same amount of stories,
I'm gonna
not
look
necessarily
at
above or below each other.
Bobrowski's to see in the definitions, did we
I have nothing against the idea of it, but I just need it clarified.
Okay.
There is a definition of mixed use.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, my opinion, I'm almost like, why don't we scrap most of this use table, use the underlying zoning that's already there, and then just maybe have a small use cases that we want for specifically for what we would want in a residential area.
That's exactly what I tried to make. That's not my table. I sent another draft, and
No,
it's
that's not-
it's
I just-
it's written there pretty
That's where
specific.
I'm going with this discussion. That's kind of where I'm heading. Like, let's simplify it. Like, honestly, this should probably be as simple as possible, make it as digestible as possible. So that's kind of, not that we should make any big changes now, but just let you know, that's kind of where my mind is now going to with the current discussion.
Yeah, I think part of the reason that we built all this out is that if you do some commercial use along with the residential use, it's more revenue for the town.
Right.
And that's why we had specified it out in all of the previous ones. In that,
Just take the table.
trying to encourage other things other than just apartments.
Paul, is there any way you can bring up the email I sent you today with the
Guys, let's avoid the
NDK?
crosstalk while we're.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I do have that. Steve, if I understand correctly, you're saying you have a suggestion for simplifying you'd like to present to the board.
Yeah, I
is
just
that
asked
correct?
it. I just
Yeah,
asked
okay.
it to bring up.
I'd like to make sure Steve gets his chance to present. If he's
Yeah.
got something put together, I want to get the chance.
Okay. Okay. Paul, while you're pulling that up, Warren, did you want to make a specific comment to the bylaw language?
I'm not sure if, as the board finished their discussions on what they wanted in and out. I have a question, two things. One, this schedule of uses, is this something we developed, or is that something we got formatted from somewhere else in terms of what we're using?
And
And
this
the
is
reason I'm calling, I'm sorry.
specific to the overlay.
Yeah,
I believe this is something that we developed with Serped. I don't think it was taken from anywhere else.
This is sort of hodgepodge back from Serpid. This was their suggestion and then edited again.
okay. Two things. One, allowing various commercial uses without a special permit, especially affected in the case of Norton Glen and Renville Village, which is partially a residential 80, seems really, right now, the only place that I see this even being relative is Mansfield Avenue. I mean, commercial, having any kind of commercial at the Norton Glen or Renville Village or East Main Street is just, doesn't work. I don't know who's thinking about it, but even top of the house stuff is really not relevant. I mean, Mansfield Avenue may be the only location. I don't know, someone mentioned that they may be able to make a use differential subdivision, and that's fine. But to incorporate that into a residential area, where you're talking about nightclubs and health clubs and fraternal lodges and country clubs in a residential area, is just counter to everything in our bylaws, and I don't know why we intend to do that, especially when there's no likelihood that those things would be appropriate. The other thing was, even if you're doing that, even if, let's say in Mansfield Avenue or someplace that's close to other retail operations, on the first floor you've got nightclubs, small-scale indoor recreation, recreational camps, health clubs. I don't want to live above those things. You want to have someone living above a nightclub? I don't know where these things came from to make any relevance. Certainly if you want, a top of the shop, a retail operation, that's fine. Restaurants get a little dicey in terms of how much cooking they're doing and fire and the like over a residential area. So those things may make sense in the appropriate place, but they're going so far overboard with these things, it doesn't make any sense. And then you have any floor, not just the first floor, fraternal lodge, country club, administrative professional offices, conference center, with 50% dedicated to the residential use. The question I was reading through this, I don't know whether the statute requires any percentage of multi-family units, but I did look at 72.051C 2D. And I'm not sure whether that's relevant. I think that goes to, it says something about using it as reducing the unit capacity needed for a multifamily district, where, and it says one, the multi-use district zoning is in an eligible location where existing village-style or downtown development is essentially to preserve the pedestrian access to amenities. It also says in D, the requirement for non-residential uses is limited to the ground floor buildings. In no case represents a requirement that more than 33% of the floor area of the building allowed a project must be for non-residential uses. So I'm not sure whether this applies, but it would look like it would be limited to the first floor, and I don't know why we're going and expanding this to multiple floors, because it looks like it's not it doesn't seem like you're talking about allowing any standalone operation. So it's not like you can put a store next to this multifamily house. Right now, it has to be ground floor or but I don't know why you're having any floor.
I understand what you're saying, yeah. No, I think, I would say I appreciate your comments. I think we're still definitely kind of looking at this as, I think we spent a lot of time on parcels. I think we haven't looked at this language a lot over the past 3 or 4 months. So that's really what we're diving into now. So I don't think I would view this as finished. I think it's still a work in progress, but I think, like, in the right place, there is a way for restaurants and residential to work together. I mean, you look at Kelly's Place or something like that where it makes sense. Is there work to do on refining this table? I would say yes.
Can I ask a question? Do we
Yeah,
need to
I think-
know the space that we're picking before we do this then? Wouldn't that make our jobs easier? It's because
I think that we need to have
some
some
things might
idea.
make some sense.
It's kind of hand in hand at this point.
I think we need to do a little bit of in parallel, which
Yeah.
is not ideal for, I understand what you're saying, yes.
I mean specifically uses. The bylaws, yeah, I agree, we could probably, fine tune them, but in terms of uses, if we're gonna try and identify exactly what we want there, I feel like we need to know where it's gonna go.
Yeah.
My
So
sort
we
of-
can, yeah, we can leave it as, we definitely want to have that in mind when we make the final vote on this, yes, agreed. Rob, you had a comment that you wanted to raise?
Yeah, I was gonna talk on, the use of the top of the shop and stuff, and there was an ask as to what was the reasoning behind that, and because that opens us up to nightclubs and I think, what the reasoning was, and I was probably the guy that purveyed this a little bit, when I originally suggested, the Glen, I pointed out the top of the shop actually might be nice over there because having some convenience stores, and I was picturing more small things like that. I certainly wasn't picturing a Walmart or a strip club. Because that's a little bit like no man's land over that way. And I thought that would actually be a nice thing for the residents to kind of have something in that area, because they tend to have to drive all the way back up into town for a lot of things.
Basically the interchange, yeah.
Yeah, so that was the vision, and I also had a philosophy at the beginning, this is why my song has changed somewhat, is I wanted to think Norton first, but I didn't want to just say, but I don't, if we could still get something for Norton out of it, I wasn't adverse to giving something to the state too, letting them have a little bit. I really wasn't approaching this as a stick the state, like, I think outside this room we have a lot of folks thinking that way. So I had made some suggestions like that, and I think that's where you heard those things, and that's what they were based on. Was picturing more like just a little bit of a village type thing over there that could service not just the residents there, but people that are at that end of Norton, because they're driving into Easton or back into Norton a lot of things. So that just to tell you what the thinking was. Yes.
Paul, I said you've had this up for a few minutes, so Steve, did you want to just cover what you had here?
Sure. Paul, could you scroll up just a second?
I'm sorry, oops, wrong one.
Yeah, plus north of Bend resident, we have to travel up 106, 123 to.
There you go.
So-
Get food.
There's two parts of this, I guess. It's what's permitted in the district and then what would be permitted within a top of the shop development. So the first list is just what would be permitted in the development. Doesn't have to be a top of the shop, just anywhere within the district. And my theory on that was we want to add in very minor commercial uses. They are by right, so we want to be very particular about which ones we add there. And they should be compatible with a residential zone, not necessarily commercial zoned. If this district goes over a commercial zone, it will get the extra commercial uses. If it's put on a residential zone, it's only going to get these limitations, very minimal amounts. That's why I didn't include the full restaurant, nightclub, and retail options. For the top of the shop housing, if you go down a little bit, you have the any floor and ground floor uses. I added the fraternal lodge and the nonprofits up top. Like a fraternal lodge, that could be a sorority or a fraternity, but whatever for Wheaton College. The nonprofit membership home, health or rec club or whatever country club. Under federal law, that includes like homeowners associations, hobby clubs, any sort of meeting thing, a dinner club. So I feel like those are fair in a building. If they have a conference area or whatever, they want get-togethers. And again, entertainment below, a little bit to do, something to do, little shops, boutiques, maybe teaching, crafts, a little bit of food.
Okay.
That's it.
Why no services? Why no personal services?
It's lumped in together. We have retail, general services, and trade services. If we add that category, it's full retail. It could be a Walmart, it could be a plumber. We don't have beauty salon.
Beauty salon is a personal service.
It's combined in one category.
Under the new bylaws, we have 3 categories of service: trade, personal, and general.
That is not what our current bylaw is.
The proposed one is, though.
We can't zone for that. It doesn't exist yet.
Well,
I mean, and
we do have
That brings
to.
a great point, because the way it's gonna be structured at town meeting, the recodification is gonna be early in the zoning process, so we should be factoring that will be approved.
Here.
And so we should be basing this on the.
So it doesn't have to be all done over.
Right. That's why all the
recodification.
citations are for the current
Yeah.
new
That's why
recodification.
That's why I changed all the
so
sites.
in the new code, as we wrote it, like just literally last night, the day before, whatever, does it say personal services, general services, and trade services?
Correct.
So that would be like a beauty shop, a barber, a plumber, a repair shop.
Yes.
That's all one category. It's not divided.
But they are currently divided. So under
Nope,
service.
they are not currently divided. They exist as one in our current code, and we've split it into 2 categories, which is just retail and then services. But it's anywhere from beauty shop to plumber.
Right, but a service establishment is broken into 3 categories: personal, trade, and general.
Where?
Under the definitions.
Not in our uses table.
It is in our uses table.
Show me where it's divided in our uses table.
I think we're gonna get to that in the next session.
Yeah.
I don't.
So there's a question of make sure that let's look at this, at Steve's suggestion here, as a simplification. I guess, do you think that's accurate or not
I
sure?
think it's fairly
I saw
simple.
I saw your wits, so you're not looking at it as a simplification.
I mean, it's as simple as you could remove the top of the shop thing. You could just remove it. Like all the extra uses in there. You could just say any allowed residential that's there in the underlying district and any allowed commercial that's in the underlying, and make that the top of the.
No.
But this is about as simple as I think it really gets, other than removing any extra use besides multifamily.
And Paul, there's nothing in the regulations that would say we necessarily have to allow commercial by right, correct?
Not by right. Again, it's strictly multifamily has to be by right. Everything else is just add-on.
So we would have the potential, if we wanted to, not to allow top of the shop by right.
I would.
Say top of the shop by permit.
I would not want to do that though. Top of the shop should exist. We want it. We absolutely want any amount of commercial use under a multifamily.
Let's not go to special permits on any of
No
this.
special
This is
permits.
just gonna.
Because that requires a higher vote, right?
It does.
Yeah, and that gets kicked out of this.
Yes.
This is,
That's why I tried to simple it down to only the things we could do by right, which, what would be palatable by right.
Okay.
And that's, any of those options are for discussion.
Okay. So I would say to everybody, let's take a look at this, take a look at the existing, take a look at Steve's suggestion, and we need to have comments, additional suggestions. Eric, anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I'm just thinking out loud because, like I said, this is kind of going in the direction I was thinking. I was just spitting out loud like the changes I might make, but I mean that could be for next time. It's fine.
Okay. Are there any other sections of the bylaw that we want to review this evening? And Eric, you're looking at this as let's strip it way, way down.
Yeah. So basically, like, since these overlays will end up being over commercial and residential, I would probably just want to strip it down to what would we want to see in the residential area, like the top of the shops and whatnot. Nothing else. That's how to the bone I want to get with this.
Okay.
So Chair, can I just add that I would love to get your comments in writing? That way I can start incorporating them in there.
Red line is preferred.
Red line preferred or strike through underline, but yeah, I'm on board with simpler the better.
Okay. Anything else for this discussion?
I'm good from here.
Okay.
Everything else is just technical. I can just shoot my edits.
Okay. Final item on our agenda, continue discussion on recodification. I know we touched on it a little bit already. I will say thank you to Steve and Laura for taking on a lot of the reviewing work and going back and forth on different pieces here. Paul, did you want to give an update? Do you think Laura or Steve are best suited to give the update here?
Laura, I'm going to give that option to you.
Paul, why you bring up the
Yep.
clean version, because he marked everything in yellow. Sorry, Mark was going to go through this. I will pull up my red line version just here. So if we're stuck as to what exactly got changed, we have a... You
Yeah,
can
so-
ask me.
So Laura, just pulled.
What's that?
Yeah, it's up there. And just from a time check, we were at 9:57, just so everybody's aware.
Yeah.
Give Marco extra treats before I left. I knew this was going to be a long day.
Okay. So Laura, what specific sections do you think you want to touch on here?
Mark had pointed out in yellow like the areas.
I've got one.
Okay.
Here, so the non-residential parking.
6-5. Hang on.
615.
Okay. We added here in the center, in the event of appeal filing by the applicant shall prepare a study following the procedures of the ITE or other procedures deemed acceptable for submittal to the Zoning Board of Appeals. It's just to give them a heads up that they may have to provide additional.
I like it.
Okay.
If it doesn't fit, the building commissioner can make a call. If you don't like his call, back it up.
Yep.
I like it.
Okay. Just kind of scrolling through. Mark needs to finish a few places. 1.8 was unfinished. Overall, we're changing selectmen to select board, building inspector to building commissioner. That's just kind of general stuff.
I thought we found and replaced all those like 3 times, and they're still popping up.
It's, well, he still had inspector as opposed to commissioner.
Yeah.
That's a new one. He is going to take the column out of 6.1, that parking table, where it had including but not limited to these uses. He's just striking the entire table because he just had same previously.
Okay.
So Laura, the next one that's highlighted, I'm almost there, are the new ADU requirements.
Okay, that's an entirely
8.4
new.
on
Yeah.
page 73.
And this is basically coming from the new state rules.
It's state,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's the state law, so it is a change to what we have, but these are very explicit standards, and Mark has mirrored them.
I like simple and no room for discussion. Is there any room for discussion?
Not
Okay.
really.
Then we're done. Is that?
Noise me, but I had nothing I could say about it.
Yeah.
It is Laura, was there anything else you had
You
on
can
that?
see where the
I'm
arc of the
looking,
state is
the,
going.
we should talk about the use tables, because there was a somewhat of an overhaul. I'm looking just to see.
Laura, as you're looking for that,
Mhm.
I do want to mention, we're making one change to the Wetland Protection District.
Oh, that.
It didn't have any, what I would call opt-out language. Like, for example, the Water Resource Protection District says if you have a boundary dispute, you can get a hydrologist to issue a report and you can accept that report. The Wetland Protection District, we're doing something similar to say if you dispute the boundaries of the district, because this district was written 50 years ago when wetlands have changed.
Yes.
And we've worked with Mark and with John Thomas, the conservation agent. We can write it to say that if you have a wetland study conducted by a wetland scientist, you could change the boundaries of that district. Or if you wanted to really go all out, delete the whole section as it's duplicative and causes confusion, but.
I guess I don't mind option A.
Sure.
If you, this is what we have as the Wetland Protection District. If you don't like it, show us why it's wrong.
Yeah, just correct the boundaries of it.
And
That's
if
fine.
John and whoever ends up creating a new map, then we'll just replace that and the language will stand, so that's fine.
Yeah, well, it's never been drawn on a map. It's of legal descriptions and.
Yes.
Yeah, so anyway, that's the fix. We'll just go with that language to do it.
Okay.
And then, I'll pull up the use table. Laura, you're on.
No, that's okay. I'll bring mine up. Hang on. There was something with regards to a special permit that I actually did talk to. Where are the special permit standards?
Oh, okay, about the surety?
No. Which section was special permit? 6 something?
Nobody's sharing anything right now, just so
Yeah,
you're aware.
Yeah, I'm scrolling.
No.
That's fine. I'm
Trying to
just
find
tech
it, then
support.
we'll share.
Landscape standards.
Steve, while they're scrolling, from your perspective, what open items do we still have to discuss?
The things that need to be cleaned up, in my opinion, is which me and Laura have been working on this past week, back and forth, is the final organization of the uses table, which would be the order that the uses are laid out in, what chart they're part of, and then maybe a few tweaks to whether they're a special permit or not, depending on what they are. I tried to eliminate almost every change I had made previously, and holding off.
You're postponing them.
Postponing, yeah, they don't all need to be part of this one, so.
Yeah, we're
we can-
making a punch list of things to address.
Is
Okay, I
parking
found it. It's-
table still, are we leaving the parking table?
I'm
Another
fine not
day.
touching it for now.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a
Very simple.
Where is it, Laura?
another day. 10.5.2, the criteria for a special permit. For some reason, I was thinking that was clause 6. So, one of the things here, there used to be 6 of these, with the 6th one being things that we should consider potential fiscal impact, including impact on town services, tax base, and employment. Every time Mark has reviewed that with us, he keeps saying, but don't use that as your primary reason for denial. And I feel like that's just setting us up to fail, because 20 years from now, nobody is going to remember that Mark told this board that not to use that. So I feel like, and it might be a difference without a distinction, but my proposal was to remove that from the list of standards and to put it within the preamble. So that last sentence says, in addition to any specific factors that might be set forth by this bylaw, we added, as well as the potential fiscal impact on town services, tax base, and employment, the determination shall consider each of the following, so that we can't rely solely, 20 years from now, somebody can't rely on potential fiscal impact and the state comes back and says, you can't deny it for that reason alone.
I'd like it if we remove the extra and of number 5, because it's no longer
Yep.
it's now it's the last one.
Got it, thank you. The one thing I did have a question about from a legal standpoint that I was hoping Mark would weigh in on here, there was a suggestion at the very last part of that sentence to say, we shall consider those things currently and in the future. Currently and in the future is the clause that I'm wondering whether it's legal. I have a feeling Mark is going to come back and say you have to look at the scope of the project in front of you and you can't consider the fiscal impact of something 5 years from now and use that as a clause.
The wording now says potential fiscal impact, so that can be interpreted for next week or next year or next decade.
Okay. It's just I had a question for Mark specifically as to whether we could use that clause. So I can follow up with him specifically. I just want to make sure we're not leaving ourselves open to any legal issue.
And if we want to see if we want to add it, I don't see it moving the needle in terms of how we would look at it.
Yep.
I think I would, if I was looking
He
to project
left it
something
there,
out
so
to the future.
I'm assuming it's okay.
If I was going to project something out to the future, I think the existing language on the screen now would allow me the mental leeway to do that.
Okay. Fair enough.
I agree with her point on exposure.
Refresh my mind, when were we told we couldn't consider fiscal impacts?
It's come up more than once.
I know, but were we told we couldn't?
Mark said
Mark says don't rely that as, don't make that your primary
Because I thought
reason
we
for
were told we
denial.
couldn't, I'm thinking Blue
When
Star,
we
I'm
had
thinking
the
something.
Reservoir Street
it's
one,
more
that was a
like
big one.
we can't. Yeah, it's
Zero Mansfield Ave got their lawyer to write us a letter saying we can't deny
Yes.
it based on that.
Yep.
Is that what I'm thinking of?
Yes, but it was, the
It's
way
come
he
up
put
with-
it was, you can't
You can
deny it for
factor-
economic impact, but fiscal impact is different than economic impact.
Yeah.
And
It's
he made
been-
that distinction.
And it's been suggested by every abutter for 8 years.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's another reason is it gives abutters a potential reason to appeal. It's just setting us up for more appeals. So my feeling was take it out of the standards and just put it in the preamble. So it's something to consider, but you can't hang your hat on it, and it's clear you can't hang your hat on it.
And we won't reference it in the decision.
I wouldn't, because generally we're only going to reference
Number one will
the
cover
standards. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Number 1 would cover any of that if we wanted it to.
The other thing that I had suggested, kind of a reverse of this in 10.5.4, in the preamble it says we can put reasonable conditions, including performance guarantees. I felt like that was an important one that probably should be called out specifically, so I added it as number 10, requirements to post surety in the form of either a cash or performance bond, just so that it's belts and suspenders. If we're citing pertinent example conditions, I think it's one, and it could get lost in the preamble.
No issue.
Okay.
So the use table.
Yeah, I'll pull
needs
mine
to be
up.
finalized.
It's close, it's not done. I'll pull up. Or unless, Paul, you've got it already.
I do.
Okay.
You're driving.
But the big changes here from our existing use table are structure and organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, alright, so hang on, I'm gonna...
Lost it, Paul.
I know I had it, I think, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I think I was
You wanna
doing...
put it
I
back
think
up?
I was driving.
Okay.
Okay.
Alright, so hang on.
So this is no additions to our use table, is what you're saying?
There are
Addition...
some.
There's some modifications.
Because I know we
So-
had a list going from when I was on zoning board, like stuff that was definitely needed.
Alright, so overall, the main thing, so general, where Mark had provided we got a ton of new definitions that were very clear, very robust, and provided a lot of categories. Where we got a good definition, it was put into the use table. So, and then we put that top line for all capitalized terms, refer to section 11, so that we don't have to get into a lot of detail within the table itself. People can just simply refer to mobile home, go to the definition. The one thing we did here, mobile home used to, in our prior table, have in parentheses next to it temporary. Our current definition allows for temporary and permanent mobile housing, so I struck temporary here. The other thing is, so he had provided us with 12 different categories, one of which was miscellaneous and one was other. Neither Steve nor I really liked that, so we went through all of the miscellaneous and other and separated them out into other categories, and we've renamed some of the categories. We've actually created a new one, but it makes sense when we get there. So our residential uses here, the one thing that we are missing, so senior housing says refer to set 8.3. There's a definition there for long-term care, but it is solely applicable to aged residents or senior residents. We are missing a use definition and allowance, a spot in the use table for
other senior
long-term care that is for non-aged. So rehab, treatment centers, physical therapy, behavioral therapy, that sort of thing, where there might be a residential component to it. That is missing, and Mark is going to need to, we've asked him to, if he's got a good definition, and Paul had determined it should go into community facilities. So community facilities, most other towns refer to this as institutional facilities. So it covers kind of a broad spectrum.
Okay.
So public service, public utilities, one of the things, he provided us a new definition, essential services, but we already had public service and public utilities, so we had him strike his essential services so that we didn't have to go and update the text of the bylaw everywhere. We moved medical centers and clinics here. We moved funeral establishments here. Club or lodge private moved here.
So existing but moved.
Yep, rehabilitation is going to be a new one. And we're going to need to set the allowances for it, but it'll go here as well. For the next one, we had, we used to call it open space, agricultural, and outdoor recreational uses. He had it as simply, I think it was just agricultural uses.
Yeah, it was just farms in one.
Yeah, so we put it back to open space, ag, and what we're going to call passive outdoor rec. For some reason on number 1, he had removed references to farming and just left the agriculture. So we put that back in. On number 2 and 3, he had qualified the size for some reason that we didn't know, and number 1 actually already specifies the parcel, so it's sort of redundant and it just puts it back the way it was.
I remember it being redundant and there being a reason, and
Yeah.
me saying that I didn't feel like arguing the point.
Probably. So we've got dog kennel, daycare, vet facilities. There's certain ones that could fit in multiple categories. We just tried to pick the best one because it's involving animals. We put it here. And then we've got your passive recreation. So the area is number 9, and then the passive recreation use is number 10.
Okay.
The next category, instead of calling it indoor and outdoor rec uses, it's just recreational uses. So we've struck what was number 3 because that went under open space. The one thing here that we do need consensus on is small scale indoor recreation. So we have 2 different definitions. So we always had small scale indoor recreation, but it actually allowed quite a bit of things that necessarily were not small scale. Mark gave us a new definition for commercial recreational facilities outdoor. So in talking with Paul, we said, okay, do we want to combine them or separate them? And there was a feeling that things like music studios, dance studios, voice lessons, that sort of thing, probably are okay at small scale, and we should probably allow them in residential with a special permit. So where we did change one of the allowances, and we would like the board's agreement to that, is to make small scale indoor recreation in residential allowed by special permit only, as opposed to number 4 where it's not allowed at all. And I can get you the definition of small scale. Hang on one second.
Yeah, that would include dance studios and smaller scale compared to the commercial recreational facilities. So
So you're talking
intense.
almost
Small
something like FL Music that's kind of good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Small scale indoor recreation provides amusement, entertainment, physical fitness that occurs indoor for a fee or admission charge, may require membership and cater to walk-in, may also include a beverage, food or beverage service. Such uses are not limited to arcades, art, dance, exercise studios, drama, voice, instrumental instruction studios, lacrosse and soccer, martial arts studio, indoor swimming, tennis, handball, pickleball, badminton, racquetball, and golf simulation.
If I had to say, there's a few of those that trail on the end that definitely seem a little bit larger scale.
Right.
A swimming area does seem like it's.
Those are going into office parks now.
They seem a little excessive. I'm not like against it, but it definitely seems like it's not small scale.
Training ones in strip
Yeah,
malls.
like an Olympic-sized pool, I would not consider that small scale, but, you know,
A kiddie's splash pad at a daycare.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Lacrosse and soccer, that was the one that sort of stuck out to me, but Paul explained it's not necessarily the size of the facility, it's the number of people you would expect to be using it at any one time.
Pickleball's loud.
So there's one over in Easton, Fieldhouse Arena, that doesn't look big, but they host soccer, lacrosse, baseball.
I mean,
It's not a large facility.
I grew up down the Grove. We had a giant soccer bubble down the road. It was
I
fantastic.
remember the soccer bubble. That
So-
was back in the 90s, and now it's now.
So,
I'm in favor.
Okay, so if everybody's okay, small scale indoor rec, instead of being disallowed within residential, we will now allow it with special permit. Unless anybody feels very strongly against that.
if this feels very strongly,
Okay.
speak now or hold your peace for a couple of weeks.
All right.
So
Forever.
I feel very strongly about going to bed. and that's
Okay,
about
I'm
it.
getting there. I'm getting there. All right.
Rehearsal space for a metal band.
Nonprofit, that just got moved to that particular, because it's rec country club. Recreational day camp, that got moved to recreational use. Office uses,
You took out my redundant ad from 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I did, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
The other thing I did was I updated number 5 to be more modern terminology. It used to be like data center or data mining or something along those lines. I just updated it for, no, it wasn't data center. I forget exactly.
Data
what-
processing.
Yeah. I updated it for more modern terminology, that's all. And there was no definition for it, so.
Nobody's putting a big data center.
No. So-
Electricity's too expensive.
Office uses are set aside in their own use table, and then the next we've got commercial, retail, and service uses. This combined 2 previous tables. So it's got all of your retail establishments. Steve, you had a question about services, so those are now all listed here.
Yep.
Body art establishment got moved here, adult entertainment got moved here. The one that's still sticking with me that I can't figure out where else to put it is this one.
Is
But
that new? Is that completely new?
No,
It's
it's
no, it was
not new.
always
It was
there.
in the industrial, but I have another chart. It's almost the same as this, but there's a couple little differences. I combined it with the other vehicle sale.
I talked to Paul about it, and he and I were going back and forth. We felt like the sale or rental was kind of the predominant factor as opposed to the product itself. But again, we also agreed there's 3 different categories. This, you know, if we're looking at farm implements, it could go under ag. It could go under vehicle, but farm implements and machinery are not necessarily vehicles.
Right. And it's
So-
only being allowed in commercial, well, industrial by right and commercial by special permit.
Alright, cool.
There were
Where's
few
the gap
things-
between a pickup truck and a snowplow?
What's that?
I mean, if you rent a pickup truck with a snowplow, you're getting a vehicle and a piece of equipment.
Right, but if
The
you're
primary
renting a
use
thrasher,
requirement.
then
Right,
it's just
yeah.
a thrasher that you would attach to the back of your truck.
It's just
your
the
tractor.
primary use that we're regulating here.
Yeah.
So if their primary use is selling pickup trucks and they rent a Bobcat on the side, I would view the primary use as selling pickup trucks and the Bobcat as an accessory use.
It's agreed. There's things like I said, this could have gone in 3 different categories. There's a few things that just don't fit nicely everywhere.
If possible, I'd like to review the other version that I put out there.
Okay.
But
The rest is the same. Again, just combining the other things. So we changed motor vehicle uses to vehicle-related uses because we put bus, railroad, passenger terminals, and train stations here, and a train is technically not a motor vehicle, apparently.
It has a motor and it's a vehicle, it doesn't.
It's not because it runs on a track.
Okay.
It is not a motor vehicle.
Even though it has a motor, it is.
Yeah, yeah, it does. So because we had the same allowances for car wash and motor vehicle light service, just combine them into the 2.
they were already combined
No, car wash was separate. It
in
was-
our original.
Yes, yeah, so we combined them because we put common driveway here since driveways involve vehicles and common driveway didn't really fit great anywhere else.
Just a yes or no, is there a good definition of commercial parking facilities? I just can't
No,
remember.
not that I know of.
No.
Because you can, so if you have a car dealership and you want to store 200 cars, it becomes a real issue.
I would say that
And so
would.
that's usually like
That's
an
their
over-
main use.
It's not a main use, it's an accessory, yeah.
I would call that their main use.
I would call that a storage lot,
Well, it's called many things.
like a storage facility.
I've dealt with this about 20 times.
But that's-
This is what I'm saying. It's usually, there's usually something called open lot storage,
Yeah.
which is usually just automobiles.
I would just call it part of their principal use. And they can put it where their principal use
That's
is
why I was
allowed.
asking if there was,
Yeah.
what's the what is,
We don't have one, it's
what
not
is commercial
capitalized.
parking facilities?
Yeah, it was as
That's
it
what
was in
there.
our current, yeah.
Yeah.
So what
If
is
you
it?
want to propose,
I'm imagining a parking garage or a pay to park lot.
That's
Yeah.
what I was
A mini
imagining,
lot.
but
yeah,
Yeah.
Parking garages are usually a whole different animal.
Well, yeah, but that's what I would take it as.
yeah.
He's kind of right that we shouldn't imagine, so.
If you want to propose something,
Yeah. Okay. And
I'm taking
and
by
then
your
we've killed miscellaneous.
killed
thank you.
miscellaneous, separated it out. Marijuana uses became its entirely own table just because it's a little,
That's
it's distinct. Industrial uses. All right, I'm not going to get into that right now because we're going to table that for another day. I had proposed initially where we allowed industrial by right, restricting it to special permit when they abutted a residential district to make our lives easier. And we talked to Mark about it, and unfortunately, there is a concept of conformity, and in order to be able to do that, we would technically have to rezone the parcels in question as something like light industrial. Special permit needed. So we're going to table that for another day because that got way beyond recodification.
Thank you.
Okay. So that one just got moved. Wholesale distribution of food and beverage got struck entirely because number 7 already contains warehouse storage and distribution, and it doesn't really matter what they're distributing or if it's wholesale. And the categories were the allowances were exactly the same.
Perfect.
And then then, for lack of a better place, anything related to communications got moved here. So your electronic messaging center, wireless communications, digital billboard, and then the other one that we had that we used to be, I forget, I think it was I forget where it was. It was somewhere, it was an outdoor or open space. Outdoor lighting for non-residential use, that got moved here.
Or is it not allowed, Village Center Core?
That's it, yeah. Every place else by special permit. VCC is where it's not allowed.
Is the high school fields in Village Center Core, or is it short?
No, it's short.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then I think the last one is accessory uses. And I don't think we did anything there. And then we struck the other uses and we just moved those away. So we wound up, I think, with still 11 categories, but
Okay.
they're organized a little more
Okay.
logically.
So there's
But-
still a little bit of work here.
Yes. They're
Is
not done, but that's kind of the major changes to the use table that we just wanted everybody's kind of sign off on before we kept proceeding.
Do you feel like you have all that you need now to proceed?
Yes, I need to talk to Mark about 2 or 3 things. 2 with regards to the wording itself and 1 on the use table.
Okay.
But yeah, if we can just get a half an hour of his time on the phone separately, then I think we're okay.
Okay.
So I'll let Steve drive now.
All right. Yeah,
I'm
Laura
gonna
pretty much
stop.
handled most of it. I got a couple little changes from hers, just a few differences.
Do you want me to leave mine up or do you want to share yours?
Could you share mine, or whoever has it? You both got it sent an email.
That was today?
Yeah.
Okay, hang on, sorry. I've been out of pocket all day.
The most simple changes, I guess, right off the bat, is I kept the food table separate instead of combining it with retail. Whether or not we do it doesn't really matter, but. And the agricultural table, I kept that separate instead of combining it with recreational. I felt it was pretty specific. The farms are not really the same as sports facilities and stuff, and kind of worked simple that way. Other than that, it's mostly just some rearrangement.
I can't find. You do?
Paul's got it.
Good, because I can't find your email. I'm sorry.
But
And
are
I
there-
saw it earlier.
Are there differences in terms of allowances, or it's strictly
Well,
structure?
skip the whole dimensional thing because we just skip past that. I don't think we're going to use that. I kept the suggestion there, even though we're probably not pursuing it, of splitting the multifamily. That's a future effort, I think. But essentially, here, what I want the board to focus on is just the order of things and the charts. The uses, so be it. I did include the long-term care facilities, nursing, convalescent homes. Whatever. Laura said we didn't have it, but we do have it in our table currently. The only thing I added was long-term care facility, as Mark suggested.
Okay.
But otherwise, that exists. Hospital, nursing, and convalescent. That's in our use table already. We don't have to add it. It's just there.
Okay.
Well, Mark said we're not going to use long-term care facility because it's covered under the definition of senior housing. Which is why we need the separate category for non-aged long-term care.
So
Okay.
senior housing's there, and then there's another category that's for non-aged long-term care.
Yes.
Yeah, they would
So
be able
that's-
to choose whichever definition was more appropriate.
Yeah, Mark's going to give us hopefully a definition, and then
Yeah.
basically it'll specify it could be physical, behavioral types of rehab and other care facilities for non-aged
Okay.
I think
persons.
that's what that is.
Okay. Is there, so from a structure perspective, you mentioned agriculture is on its own and then recreational is on its own,
Yeah, scroll down a little bit.
and other changes?
I suggested the top of the shop in the commercial just be a by right, but the uses I don't have to worry about so much, the allowances rather. Fraternal Lodge, civic nonprofit, it's not allowed in the residential zone right now, so I suggested we make it special permit.
By special permit?
The facility that's trying to buy Tweed right now, they can't do that.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the kind of situation. A VFW and Knights of Columbus, they can't go anywhere in a residential zone right now.
Okay.
So that was my suggestion on that one. Not crucial, but suggestion.
Yes.
Then continue down. So that's the agricultural table. I did offer the suggestion there. I put the comments on the side where the first 3 lines, that covers, if we can replace that with just agriculture according to Mass General Law, that one line replaces our 3
The
lines.
existing, yeah.
Our 3 lines have like the 5 and 2 acre setting, whatever. The way I wrote it covers that setting. It's just by special permit, and if you reach that criteria, it's allowed, with that little asterisk next to the special permit. Sort of.
Yeah, I know you said it's covered by state law anyway, so we're, yeah.
I cover that, and then our animal, like our domestic, well, our personal use animals. It says poultry and rabbits, but it doesn't say anything about turtles or hedgehogs or what it might. It doesn't cover any domestic species. It's very specific. How do you? Well, Rob, if you want to breed your parrots, bro.
I said mice. I was like, who in Norton wants to breed mice?
I think there's a level of. We're not looking for somebody with a pet hedgehog.
Right. That's why I said domestic species. If it's not a commercial use, if it's not a farm, if it's not agricultural use, and it's a allowed species, you should just be allowed to have it. We shouldn't be seeing a special permit for that or anything.
Yeah. I know when we changed the rules around poultry, I'm going to call it 6 years ago, we were trying to figure out how to make sure that if somebody wanted to have 5 chickens, they didn't need a special permit.
Mm-hmm.
And the solution we came up with was what we have now, which is if you have less than 10 chickens and none of them are roosters, we don't care.
Yeah, I mean, I got a lot of neighbors with dogs that just bark and bark and bark.
Yes.
I mean, chickens, no competition. It's the idea that one species is a little bit louder than the other. And
yeah, whatever we were doing was an improvement over the existing, so we got some leeway in terms of what we were actually proposing.
But either way, that was my suggestion to simplify those 2 lines, and then I included the zoological museum petting zoo thing. So if anybody wants to put an animal on exhibit, it has to go through special permitting.
Okay.
It might be a future a thing to go to, but that was my suggestion there. Either way, agricultural table should be separated.
Okay.
And then continue down from there. It's a recreational table, just all combined. It's pretty straightforward. If the allowances don't want to be changed, that's fine. I did include the small scale indoor recreation change.
Okay.
Like a hiking trail, I don't think needs to be coming to the planning board for special permit. It's a path.
Probably not.
So I just cleared that line. I just made it by right. And then after that, if you want to continue down.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some changes to the wording and stuff if everybody wants to go over it, but if you want to continue down to the next category. So we got the food and beverage, we got retail, marijuana use, the office table on the next one. And then the industrial uses, which I simplified down a little bit. Again, self-storage facility, we don't need its own line. It is a storage facility. We just approved one under warehouse storage facility, and it's not any other use, so I don't see why it needs its own line.
I think Paul disagreed with that, but I don't remember why.
Well, I think it's because self-storage is typically for, personal items that, have, whereas a warehouse could be plumbing supplies.
Yeah, but it's a big building. It's a big commercial operation. It's a storage building. And we're not changing the permissions. I don't want self-storage by right throughout the village commercial.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't see, it's not like if it was like a self-storage locker, like a smaller locker facility, that's something I could see going in the village commercial, but by right sort of, but this is clearly a large building, generally.
Okay, sure.
I think it's more of I'm viewing it as what's bringing in the items themselves, so you're going to see a lot more
It's U-Hauls
Box-
versus
box-
tractor trailer.
Yeah.
I mean, I
It's
think
still a
just
storage
different
building, though.
I just think it's fundamentally different, just self-storage and warehouse. And I think the uses, the how it operates is different. I mean, I don't want to fall on my sword on that one, but I just believe that they're different and should be separated, but.
Okay.
I mean, it might, like, again, because we just approved one a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
Under the warehouse setting.
Right. No,
Like-
understood.
And again, I don't think we need to give it special permissions beyond where a warehouse would be.
Okay.
The manufacturing, I simplified down. I got rid of factories manufacturing firm and just put it mixed with manufacturing, light manufacturing or heavy manufacturing, basically.
Okay. And we're almost there.
That's it. I made a utility table instead of keeping that in the industrial. So that's
Yeah. Okay. They do
pretty
somewhere.
straightforward. The vehicle table, and that's got that sale and rental of new or used vehicles, construction materials handle. You just want a combined line.
Okay.
If anybody's fine with it, if not, so be it.
Okay. Can I ask? Are we through scrolling through the chart?
There's just the accessories left. I think that's the only.
Okay.
Small question.
I was.
But that's. Yeah.
I said, is there table organization aside? Can we just compile a list of specific decision points that we're looking for the board to make between the two versions?
Okay.
Do you want A or B?
Sure.
A or B on is self-storage go under warehouse or go by itself?
Okay.
And then in terms of the organization of, do we want ag as its own table or do we want to combine with recreation? It makes no material difference in what's actually allowed, it's just
Right.
making it, which ways makes the most sense structurally to organize it and make it easiest to work with. So that, I think, if we have the decisions on the items, then we can just choose which alignment do we like better.
Sure.
Any objections to that?
No, that would help move the meeting faster.
No, I mean, because I'm looking at these side by side, I can see, okay, I can see why you do that, I can see that, I can
Yep.
see why you do that, and it's okay.
It's an excellent
The
statement.
decision, like, okay, my decision is warehouse and self-storage different? Yes or no? And then how we arrange it is a separate decision. Does that make sense, Laura, to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Cool.
Is there anything else that we wanted to cover as part of this discussion?
I have one small question. You were scrolling fast and you went by and you said, and this is for marijuana use. And does it say does the wording actually say marijuana use or marijuana sales? Because those are two very different activities.
I think they're both covered, actually. We don't allow social consumption,
Okay, just make sure, the way you said it, it sounded.
but it's in our table.
Like a hash den or something.
Social consumption is a no everywhere, the idea being that
We're
when
ready
it was
for
put
it.
in,
Okay.
Yeah, the category
are
is
you gonna have
marijuana
a place
uses.
where somebody can smoke and then leave and drive?
Yeah,
That
well,
was the,
A weed bar.
no.
yeah.
I'm not saying, yes. Somebody suggested the idea of marijuana hot yoga, and I went, yeah, somebody would do that. But I'm not sure. I think that was when we adopted the bylaw. We were like, we know this breathalyzer.
Are we really going down
How do
this
we
path
feel
right
about
now?
this?
Yoga together?
Are we really
You
going
can
to go
see
down
that.
this path right now?
Okay. I don't know, whatever. So,
That's for a future meeting to update
yes.
the marijuana section.
So, but yeah, I know when we originally adopted it, that was we just drew a line, no social consumption. It saves all of the
Okay.
questions about what's gonna be allowed and what's not, so.
And I was kind of catching on that worst of use, marijuana use versus marijuana sales.
Yeah, so it's only the sales that are allowed.
If it says use, it says sales.
Marijuana uses might be sales, manufacturing,
Yeah.
cultivation.
Yeah, you says would be, yeah.
Okay, use says, okay.
Okay.
I'm good.
Anything further?
Motion to adjourn.
Hold on, I hear your motion. I'll ask, I do see one hand raised. Mr. Siegel, did you want to add anything further? I know that as Steve went through it, he said that he's looking not to make wholesale changes to the allowances in each zone, but
Yeah, one is a question. Can you tell what is gonna be provided before the town meeting? Is there gonna be some red line copy to identify? I know there's, in the bylaw, there's a lot of things that have been changed in general, but there's somebody describing to the population exactly what kind of changes have been made, especially in the table of uses, some red line copies.
I believe there's gonna be a handout that goes over it, yes.
Mr. Chairman? If we're gonna separate out the list like you were asking Steve to do, here's all the decision points, couldn't we actually fill that out and say, here was the decision we made at each one of those points too, and that would satisfy what he's asking for?
Some of the decisions we've already made, so.
Okay, I was just trying to come up with a way to give him what he wanted.
The attorney that's working with us as part of this process has said they would provide a handout for a town meeting for that express purpose.
Okay, because I know the last time we met, I had requested something for a red line copy. I still haven't seen any.
Not from a red line, no, from a, what we changed overview, yes, and then there'd be a clean copy, I believe.
Okay, just two things on the current use schedule. The switch for the mobile home, deleting temporary, I was assuming that was for temporary construction or someone has a mobile home and they leave it there temporarily. The way this is drafted now, you can have the mobile home as a principal residence on an 80 acre, on a R80, and I'm not sure that's what you really want to do. I just throw that out. And the other, and Laura, you were trying to explain the senior housing, and then in C 8.3. 8.3 is very different, that's the facility. Is it supposed to be senior housing also C 8.3? Is it in addition to that? Because 8.3 is not the same as senior housing.
Yeah,
I just didn't know whether it was
8.3 is a senior housing facility, and then it refers you to the definitions within section 11 under senior housing facility. So there's a whole subsection of definitions in 11.2 that address senior housing facility. And that has things like.
But is it seeing also 8.3? Because 8.3 is different than senior housing.
8.3 is senior housing facility.
It's 55 and over, right?
No, it could be a nursing home. It
No,
could be a
because
long-term.
The definition of senior housing
Hang
is
on.
limited to 55 and over, I believe.
Yeah, and that's, I think, one of the points that Steve was looking to clarify, in that we need to have a definition for something like that that would not necessarily be limited to that population.
Okay. And then within the body itself, there's just something that maybe you can take a look at. Under 1.1, the 1.6.1, the amendment, I was looking at 48.5, and while there's notices to different towns and everybody else, I didn't find the notice to the abutters that's in our current bylaws, and that provision is now taken out. And maybe I'm misreading 48.5, but I couldn't find any notice to abutters in the statutory requirements. And right now, as it's drafted in the new bylaw, we're looking only to that requirement. If someone could check that out, I may be wrong. And the other two things were, in 5.5, you still have you want a non-conforming use built back. You want to be able to increase the floor area of a non-conforming use by 100%. I'm not sure if that makes much sense, if that's what you want to do. And the last thing was on earth materials. You have basically that it won't affect the value of the land, but you've eliminated that it won't decrease the value of the adjacent land. And I think that's the primary focus of the planning board, is to make sure not that only will it not affect the land itself, but you want to protect the abutters. And I don't know, it may be in there somewhere else, but in the purpose itself, you've eliminated the impact on the abutters. And when you're moving earth, I thought, as long as you're looking at the value of the land that's being removed from, I would think it's not unusual to affect the land, making sure it doesn't affect the land of the abutters. And those are the comments I have.
Thank you, Aaron. And I think, to your non-conforming use point, I think the intention of the bylaw is if there's a non-conforming use and it's totally destroyed, you can build it back the way it was. I think that's the intention. If I'm looking at the wrong section, then I apologize, but I think we've noted it down for review.
We did add a section to the non-conforming where they can increase the size of a non-conforming use with permission from us. If they want to add an addition to a non-conforming house, we can allow them to get a little bit bigger.
Okay, understood. We'll look at that again. Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
Lauren. Okay, I still heard your motion. We still haven't approved minutes, so I apologize.
Oy.
So we have 5 sets of minutes here that we had on our schedule.
Minutes and 5 minutes, all right.
So, first set of minutes is the minutes from April the 9th. Any additional comments, questions, or concerns?
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
We have a motion from Laura and a second from Rob. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Now we have the minutes of April the 16th.
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion for the 16th? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
One abstain.
Abstentions? One abstention.
I couldn't hear. Who made the motion?
Me.
Laura.
Laura. Who second?
Eric.
Eric.
Thank you.
Eric did one, I did the other.
Okay, next, April the 23rd.
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
Thank you, Laura and Eric. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Abstained again from Rob? Okay. Next is the minutes from May the 7th.
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? No abstentions?
Nope, I was here by then.
Okay. And the minutes of May the 21st, final notes.
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Abstentions? Okay. That concludes the items that we had on our agenda this evening. Is there anything else that you wanted to?
Kudos to how you handled yourself.
Otherwise, I hear a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there a second?
Wrote me, goes,
All
"You
in
can't
favor
argue
of
with
adjourning,
Tracy."
please say aye.
It's
Aye.
like the
Aye.
tiger that tried to
Opposed?
argue with the jackass about
Abstentions?
the,
Thank you.
grass is blue.
Boy, what a late night.
Peter, say that again?
I'm on record.
Can we get